And we're live, everybody. It is season 5, episode 15.
15.
Wow.
Yes. Not bad.
The grand finale of the season is here. It's upon us.
See, 15 is pretty solid overall. We didn't really go down on average. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, we're doing pretty good. And we were having a grand time off camera just now, having fun. We were talking about old man Dan here.
Old farmer Dan.
I tried to cut all the gray off, but you got to quit sometime.
Well, we had to wish him congratulations because Dan is now a grandfather.
Yes.
Yes. Look at it. You see his face when he said that. He's like,
yeah.
It's been 9 months in the waiting, you know. I'm ready. I'm excited. So, yeah, fun times ahead.
You're what, about 52, you said?
53, yeah.
53. So you're grandfather at 53.
Yeah, and it's a boy, and so I'm going to make him a wargamer.
There you go. Nice.
Well, in 10 years, you know what to look forward to.
Yep, so I got to get a lot of stuff painted up so I can get him to come play, and then, you know, with ready-to-go stuff. That's my plan.
Yeah. The first time when you're at the table and something's smashed on it and all these miniatures shatter, you're going to be like, go grab your bat and ball. We're going outside.
Well, but it's starting with those $1 a bag, you know, plastic army men, right?
There you go.
Know,
that's
exactly.
So you gotta work into it. You know, he's just little right now, Palmer.
Yeah.
That's where next thing you know, it's like
you don't paint your miniatures.
Your daughter will be like, why did you bring over this big giant bag? It's for Green Army men. We must have a large force to beat up on each other.
Well, and I already give my daughter and my son-in-law a Christmas ornament each year where I paint up a miniature and put an eyelet in the head that they can put on the Christmas tree. And so see, I'm subliminally kind of working that. He'll see that and he'll be like, oh, those are cool.
Looks like we got Brad, Lord Draconum, in the house. Hello, Brad. Thanks for joining.
Oh, is there a way I can see the chat? Do I just have to go on?
Go to comments to the right.
Oh, yep. Thank you.
Then if you want to type in there, you just have to pull up a YouTube window and maybe pause it so you don't hear it.
Okay.
And you can type. Yeah, that's what I just did. So
yeah, I think the only person that can type stuff in is the host. So.
Yes, inside that. Yeah.
10-4.
Yeah.
And Bill is just feeling so bad he's already eating his paintbrush.
You get time to have supper.
So before we do the, do we want to do the typical round robin of what people have been up to and all that? Why don't you? Do you want to start, Rusty? Because you're in the top left, and we'll go around clockwise, or we could start with our guests and start on the bottom and go clockwise. Start with Dan and go around. Either way.
Yeah, or counterclockwise.
Or we could go diagonal, like start this way, then go.
All right, Bill, you're up. Let's go.
Hey, this is Bill. I am just happy to be here, and I'm also working on some ruins here, some Frostgrave terrain that I'm painting up. So gonna have a nice table of fun stuff. So that's what I'm up to right now.
Any sort of water or musty drink or something to wet the whistle?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, nice.
Kirkland.
Yep.
Not playing around.
There's a
there we go.
Its own.
Mixing it with soda.
There you go. I was wondering whether you had some salt and some, you were doing the whole salt and lemon thing or whatever.
Yeah, it's like let everybody know I sent pictures out what I was planning on having tonight. So that's.
Yeah, I saw that.
Everybody had to have their festive drink tonight.
So who's up next?
Well, that'd be Dan.
Hey, yeah, hey everybody. Since the last show, I guess the one thing I did do that was kind of fun is Omaha, which is about an hour from where I live. They do an annual tournament. It's for a whole plethora of games. They even had Kings of War, of course, Warhammer 40K, that Marvel. What's that one that
Crisis Protocol.
That one, yes. There's a bunch of them, but I always do the bolt action part. And so that was a lot of fun. Mark, my buddy that lives a little ways from me, we always go down each year, and it's a 2-day tournament, so it's kind of brutal, but they do 3 games on the Saturday and then 2 games on the Sunday, and it's a fundraiser for a high school in Omaha for their debate team, and I don't know, a couple different things like that. But anyway, on a theater, I think. But so that was a lot of fun. There's kind of the same core group of people that come to it each year, and then there's always some new ones. The numbers were down a little bit this year, I think for a variety of reasons, but it sounds like a lot of them are planning to come next year. They just had some conflicts on that weekend, but a lot of fun, a lot of really good tables. If anybody's anywhere close to this area, it's well worth going to. High quality painted miniatures. There's people that come from Minnesota, Kansas, Missouri, Illinois, and of course Iowa and Nebraska. But anyway, so that was a lot of fun. I usually compete real average, partly because I'm not a huge competitive player, but I always try to make a real thematic list. And then usually this time of year I'm ultra busy, so I haven't played a game in a long time. So I just go to have fun and hang out with everybody. But I did when I got the sportsmanship trophy, so that was kind of fun.
Nice.
Yeah, but then and then I have been working on a little bit. That bolt action tournament got me kind of back into my bolt action painting, and I think that it is one of my favorite games. But I think part of the reason is because I can get regular games of it in. Nothing creates enthusiasm like after you come home from a game or knowing you can get a game in, so you get this painted up. So I've started it's been a few months now, but I've been working on a new army for bolt action. It'll be a Soviet army for based around the Battle of Stalingrad. So making nice progress on that. That's what I've been working on the last few weeks. And then I'm getting ready to do my first terrain piece for it. I got it cleaned up and primed. It's resin piece from Novus Design Studio out in Colorado.
Oh, looks great.
Yeah, and I'm going to try to do all brickwork on it. I've been watching some YouTube videos on strategy on how I want to do that, and I think I picked a technique that I want to try. So, and then I'm going to put this little chimney on it too, because a lot of the factory complexes had chimneys sticking up even after the buildings were destroyed. I don't know if you can really see it, but it's a brick textured paper that's printed. It's printed on a like a textured wallpaper is what I really think the paper is. And but you probably can't see it in the camera, but it has a beautiful realistic look. And so there's a guy that you can get it from. It's all the way from Greece, believe it or not. But it's very affordable. It takes a long time to get here, but it does come. And so I'm going to start making some custom buildings using that as well. So that's kind of what I've been up to the last few weeks. So
sweet. So now, have you had your glass of wine tonight with your wife, or are you actually celebrating with us with the wine tonight on the show?
Yeah, we already celebrate. So we didn't find out that our grandson was born until after we were both at work. So I had a rum and Coke.
Today.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's awesome.
Yeah, so rum and Coke, but I'm going with orange Kool-Aid right now. So it's in an old Gatorade bottle.
There you go.
Orange Kool-Aid with vodka in it, right?
No, straight up water, H2O.
All right, Palmer.
Oh, well, you guys might have saw that I don't have them on the screen, but I showed them on the Musty page. I probably need to do a video, but I finished Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. Mm-hmm. And so that's really like the last thing I finished. What I've been working on right now is I still have a ways to go, but I've got these trolls that I'm working on. And basically I've got my first highlight, and it's pretty stark. So I'm going to be doing like a really thin glaze over it just to dull it down a bit. And then, I kind of painted like metallics on the swords, but I have basically some work to do on these guys. I have 3 of them still, and then once I finish these, I did assemble. I got excited, with the Marvel stuff again, like finishing the product, and I assembled Scarlet Witch. Sorry, I think I call every female character Scarlet Witch now that I've painted Scarlet Witch. I was playing a game the other week, and I was calling the Black Widow Scarlet Witch the whole game. But basically, Ant-Man and Wasp. There's actually 2 regular size characters, and then they have like little characters that they transform to when they shrink. And so there's 4 bases, and so I'm going to work on them. And I have other stuff like I'm going to be working on. I did. You guys might have saw how I did a video about this thing, how I'm going to be doing oil paints on this Blade Runner diorama. Yep. I decided to sort of practice a little bit. It's not that this miniature doesn't mean anything to me. I actually kind of think it's a really cool miniature, but I'm taking this old sort of giant. It's an old metal giant, and I'm actually going to work with some oils and just work on a miniature before I do the bust. Because in general, busts are kind of newer for me. Like I've done 1, and so this is my 2nd. And I just thought before it might be easier for me to work on a miniature, just to something I'm a bit more comfortable with, and just work with some oils. But I'm excited to mess around. Victor over at Vix Miniatures, he's always inspired me with his oil work to try it and to do something new. Yeah. And so I'm pulling that out. They're like it's kind of like artistic projects, like not so much strictly. I don't really see myself doing like a ton of oils for miniatures, but yeah, there's that. And so there's always going to be something in the pipeline, which is like what we were saying before the show. Even though I feel like I'm not doing a lot, I'm doing enough to keep me busy and to thinking about things. And so I've got for my musty drink tonight, I'll show you here what I've got.
Sake, right?
Probably lime Kool-Aid.
1 second. Here we go. That's my famous thing. There we go. Last time of the season. Episode 15.
I should have done that for the baby anyway. Thanks. Cheers, Palmer.
Cheers.
Wow, a little bit of champagne. We just suddenly went high class. We got to stop this.
Well, I'm at work and Rusty's texting me. He's like, Long Island iced tea, and you're talking about stuff and you're like, I'm gonna do something cool, I'm gonna bring something cool tonight, or whatever. And I'm like, I'm gonna have to bring something. So I'm looking around. I'm like, what's this?
Oh man.
And I'm kind of combining my, I don't know how much you guys know, but like I've become over COVID. I became during the COVID era, I became a Formula One fan. And so I watch racing. Yeah. I watch every single race.
Wow.
I watched Drive to Survive on Netflix, which is sort of like a behind the scenes drama of it. It really is a drama because they do sort of play things up, but it gets you interested. It got me interested in the sport, and then it did what it's supposed to do. It sucked me in and I became a fan of the sport. I'm not really big into sports, to be honest. I don't watch a lot of sports, but I really got into the marriage of, I guess it's with all racing, like that marriage of like the car performance and then the driver's skill.
Yeah, I was a huge NASCAR fan for years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the same thing, I think. It's just like this. There's like different components to the sport, right?
Yep.
Growing up in the 60s and 70s, my dad was a huge NASCAR fan. I would watched every single race. And then when we had the VHS tapes, and I would record every race. And then if it was one of my favorite drivers would win, I'd keep the tape. And there was one time I had probably about 100 different VHS tapes from all the different races over the years from the 80s.
You're like the archive central.
Yeah. And eventually I was like, what am I do with all these? And I asked my dad, he says, just bring them up to the house. Because anytime we come up, he's like, you know, watch a race. throw them in. So he watches still.
That'd be fun to watch now because it's such a different sport now.
Oh yeah, NASCAR is not the same anymore.
No,
it's more like it's like Indy racing now, in my opinion.
Yeah, in a way. Yeah, they can make adjustments from the driver's seat, and they made the cars all the same. And it's
like they don't have lug nuts anymore. They got, just like an Indy car, a single nut.
Is it really? I was watching it, they went around. Huh.
No, they changed it to a single. Now it's.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
Yeah. And all the cars are the same, and just like it's all the different is the stickers on the outside.
Yeah.
By the way, Rusty, you were right. Typically, I do get like the Spanish and Italian versions of champagne occasionally. Like they're not called champagne, they're called something else. And then like sparkling white water, whatever, white wine. You were right. This is actually champagne this time. It's Moët and Chandon. Imperial. Brut. And so.
Wow. I'm outclassed. I got Kool-Aid in a Gatorade bottle, but that's okay.
You notice it's a mini bottle though, right? Like this isn't like, this is very,
not the
not
big
only,
one.
It's not even a regular bottle, let alone the ones that are like this big from the
Well, you're going to have to finish it because leftover champagne doesn't fly.
True. That's true.
No, it's like, it's one and done.
One and done.
This is true.
What's Rusty up to?
Well, let's just see here. Not much. I've been working on my project of these. Got some of these guys done for the Union troops.
Nice.
Or current project I've been working on. I got 10 completely finished. 10.
Is it a commission?
Yes. Basically, I traded. He traded miniatures for doing this, a whole bunch of epic scale stuff.
Okay. Are those Perry's? I can't see them well enough.
They're Old Glory.
Okay.
25s.
Yeah, true 25s probably, right?
Yeah, they're not that big. So
yeah, the old ones.
And there's some details to them, but it's like the faces are not that great.
Right.
You could expect to see nowadays. But I've decided I have all the tunics and pants and the boots and hands, all the the flesh parts done. And I just decided I'm going to do 10 at a time and just work on getting their webbing, all their kit gear finished, because you have to do all the pouches and ammo cartridge boxes and all that stuff. So I'm just doing 10 at a time, and I was planning on make it easier, little small bites. Instead of having to go through the entire thing, I'm just going to go do 10.
That's smart. That would work better for me too. How many do you have to do?
50.
Okay.
Oh, I got Gatorade.
True Gatorade. Frost. All right.
But it's not Gatorade.
It's a special mixture.
You don't have to hide it from us, Rusty. You're not on the bus in high school.
I wanted something to mix it up with.
Basically, I got a secret. It's not really Gatorade.
Mix.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. You showed us what you were making. Yeah.
So half of it in the container. So basically, Long Island iced tea is vodka, rum, tequila, triple sec, something else.
Coke.
Well, yeah, that's in there too. It has to be. But Coke, Diet,
Gin.
not Diet Coke.
Gin's in it too, isn't it?
Yes, gin. That's the one that's in there. So I got some caffeine-free Coke here to throw in there. Oh, and it has what do you call it? Lemon juice too.
It'd be easier to list what's not in it, I think.
Yeah, it's definitely something you don't sit there. There's a reason why they have a limit of 2. Because each one of those ingredients that goes in there is a shot.
Oh, good God. I wouldn't be able to do that.
So you're looking at 5 shots.
Yeah, I can't even do that.
That's like a little bottle of champagne.
But man, does it taste good.
Well played.
Oh, there you go. There's a Long Island iced tea.
Battletech.
5 shots of
Battletech.
goodness with a shot of lemon juice. Oh, and simple sugars. Basically, like a cube of sugar goes into it.
Sounds like a low-cal drink.
Yeah. So if you ever go to a restaurant and you see Long Island iced tea, limit 2.
There's a reason.
There's a reason. After drinking your second one, I've only had 10 shots. I'm just So, should we start with Dan's, right? Your topic.
You're the boss. Yeah. Well, mine wasn't so much a very specific topic, but wherever people, it's just an interesting thing. I always think when I watch. Well, to start with, personally, literally all I've ever painted are 28, or back when they were actually 25s. I mean, when I started painting in the 70s, but but that was all I ever painted, and of course back then, we didn't have hobby shops and game clubs and stuff, so I didn't even really know there were smaller. I just knew, we're all Partha, like Grenadier or whatever, just those, and what you could see in the catalogs and magazines and stuff. So, and then that to me, that was like God scale. I mean, that's all there was, and that's what I liked. And so then as I got more serious into the hobby here, I found I like 28s a lot for the detail. I like to, some people like to paint stuff just to get on the table. I enjoy the painting process. So, there's enough detail there to bring it out and to see what stuff specifically is. And from from 3 foot away on the table, even like on bolt action, you can see, that he's got a submachine gun or a BAR or what. You can tell. You don't have to have the figure marked, So I just that was what I always did and what I always liked. And I thought I'd never, I'd see some YouTube videos, and this is going back 5-6 years ago. I thought, oh, they're cool. I didn't think there were anything wrong with it, but I thought there's no way I would ever do that, And then, gosh dang, you watch YouTube, and I see like one that pops into mind is Little Legion's Stig. Used to be Stig of the Dump or whatever. Yeah. And he does a lot of 10 and 15. And then there's Paul Krause. I don't know if you've stumbled on his channel. I think it's called Krause or Krause something. I don't know if you guys haven't seen it, but he has these huge armies. A lot of them he's meticulously painted, but I think he's maybe bought some painted, and maybe some people he's indicated have painted some for him, but they're all 15s. And he does everything from, like ancient Greeks and Romans, and he's all into the history of it. But he gets these armies displayed out on the table, and you're just like, wow, that is cool. And, and it's kind of slowly been getting into my head. And, you start looking at the pros of like 10 and 15 are the two that I'm intrigued with mostly, because the cost, you can buy tons of figures for such a little investment, and companies that don't maybe do the 28s, which I'm familiar with, I'm learning there's a lot of companies that's what they do, are 10s and 15s and other scales too. But so there's a lot of product out there for a lot of different time periods, including fantasy. And then you start seeing it's a whole different game then, it's more on an epic type scale. Grand maneuvers. One of the first times it did get into my head was back, 2000, 2001, when War Master came out. Yeah. And that was when I was still the kids were little. Both of them were born. I was still trying to dabble in the hobby a little bit, and I did. I could see there's no way in heck I was ever going to get, Warhammer Fantasy 28 army painted. It was just not, you had to be realistic. And I remember had a subscription to White Dwarf, and I saw it coming out, and I was like, okay, I can paint my Bretonians, but now they're itty bitty, and it'd be a third the price, and I could maybe do that. So I did buy some, and that never, of course, didn't get to it. But so I always still had quite a few of those, and of course now they're expensive. 5-6 years ago, I started picking up a few on eBay. You could get them really cheap, and then and now I did. As I've gotten more intrigued with that they're 10 millimeter. I ordered some a couple years ago from Pendragon, because they do 10s, and they've got a couple medieval lines that are like 100 Years War, and they've scaled just really well and even their style. I mean, they just fit in perfectly, and so I did get those to just flesh out what I was missing, and so I do have a nice size Bretonian War Master army that I could then paint, and so. But I guess what it kind of brought it into was then I kind of fell into that because I already had part of an investment back when they were just off the shelf, in Forble. So I thought, well, I don't mind trying to pick up a few more, and that'd be where I'd stick my toe in. I know Rusty has a bunch of the 15 for fantasy, because that's the first time and only time I've ever played anything that wasn't 28 was when I went to Rusty's a year ago, and we played Armies of Arcana. Was that what it was?
Yeah.
In his 15s, he had 2 painted up armies that he shared, and it does give you a whole different, a different feeling, an epic look, and I was always a little intimidated because I'm like, well, all my terrain is 28, because like my bolt action stuff, a lot of it can be used for fantasy. Also, stone walls, stone wall, trees, rivers, all that. So I thought, well, that's because I try to maximize my time and investment, but more so time. And I thought, well, then I'd have to come up with a whole new table. But at the same time, you get looking around, and that's the other thing that's tempting is I always have a kind of a soft spot for some reason, a weakness for resin buildings, resin terrain. I don't know what it is. I think it's the sturdiness, the detail. But anyway, there's even Total Battle Miniatures has a huge range of, I forget if it's 10 or 10 and 20, but they've got some other scales, and there's some other companies out there too. Actually, even Novus Design Studio has a bunch of, I don't remember if it's 20 millimeter, but it's like World War II stuff, and it's like, wow, you can pick up
15s and 25.
Okay, I can't remember because I haven't bought anything of that scale, but they have a whole range for like Stalingrad, and I've seen them painted up by people on YouTube, and it's like where I'm buying a building and it's like $50. Here you can buy the 15s and 20 millimeter stuff. It's like half the price or less sometimes, and so I'm like, well, that's doable. But then it comes into the whole time factor again. So I guess it's one of those things. I feel like in some ways I'm in so deep to the 28s, and I've got limited time, and I totally enjoy painting the 28s. But boy, every so often, I watch a video or I see a rule set, it tempts me. Like if I did American Civil War, because that's only one of the other real genres that I haven't tapped into that intrigues me. And I think if I did that, there's no way I would do it in 28s. I just between time and money, you got to be realistic. So, but I'm like, well, if I did it, 15s or 10s, and then you go between the two, it's like 10s you could paint up a little quicker, you don't have to be as detailed, but 15s, I know I was looking at some 15s by Curzon Miniatures, or is that how you say it, Curzon?
Well, I don't know how you say it, but I've seen them too. I'm kind of subscribed to them on Facebook, or I'm following them, but it's Curzon. They're beautiful. Curzon. Yeah.
Because I was looking at some of their 100 Years War stuff, and it is amazing. I guess Nick, Medieval Warrior, has got a lot of 15 mil stuff also, but the only thing that keeps me a little, the 15s, I'm like, yeah, but that's almost a 28. There's still a lot of detail. is that too much detail that'll take me too long to paint? So then I go back and forth and you know, and then try to, but it's tempting. I really see the appeal. It's a whole different, you know, you can fit so much more on the table. You can, you know, have bigger battles. You're more of the bird's eye general view type stuff, and sort of like Palmer, you've been messing with or wanting to with what is that from old the Dungeons and Dragons
battle system, AD&D battle system. Yeah,
AD&D battle.
That will be part of my answer when we talk about this.
And so, so then I'm at the crossroads. I'm like, okay, well, I do have that 10 mil stuff. I've got enough of that to paint and very little investment. So that's probably where I will dip my toe in at some point here. 15's probably, you know, for me personally, I'll have to say they're probably too close to 28s as far as cost, and they are quite a bit cheaper, but time to paint the details. And then if I want to build a big army, I would be talking about a lot of painting. So I didn't say Battletech, Palmer, but that's okay.
Do you guys actually get any work done on Fridays? I don't. Gosh, I shouldn't say that in case somebody that I work with is watching this.
You got another call?
Yeah, weren't you on that show last night? And now you're taking care of my dog or whatever.
Oh, I'm really tired today.
Life's hard. So anyway, I guess it's actually. Do you have an empty?
Well, no, but it's 2 glasses and it's already there. So
they're big glasses, though, Palmer. Let's be honest.
Well, you know, I'm not sure if you guys know this, but as an old pharmaceutics principle is that the not so much the most drunk, but the way you get the drunk the fastest is the higher the amount of concentration of alcohol coupled with carbonation is what actually gets you quickest. Carbonation causes absorption to be faster. And so champagne is actually one of the things that will get you there the fastest.
Okay.
Yeah.
So carbonation. Putting a soda with like rum.
Well, yes.
Same
yeah.
effect,
like
or no?
I'm assuming so. Yeah. I don't have like data to support that, but the principle that I'd always learned is carbonation with the higher strength. Because, you know, you get the higher strength and then you get the carbonation. And so what you just said, probably.
Well, Rusty, we have to strap Rusty to his chair then because he won't make it through the night.
Yeah, well, I've been carbo loading for years now when it comes to alcohol. So
okay, you're trained. Okay.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's my 2 cents on that. I just again, I don't have strong opinions, but I see the intrigue. I'm fighting the urge because as you know, I like to have my focus, my core games, and when I start a project, I pound it through and enjoy the process. And I'm not a fast painter, and I don't get a lot of games in other than bolt action. So those are all my criteria of deciding. But I just enjoy hearing people's takes and why they choose what they choose.
You're still evolving, though, by actually even getting into and considering the other scales.
Yeah, well, you know, that's part of being human, right? If you can't be open-minded to some new things and looking at things a different way, you're not growing. So, right?
Sometimes even old Farmer Dan tries new things.
You know what? We're always innovating out here. I'm looking for a better, quicker, easier way, trying to make a buck if I can. Yeah, I mean, that's just open-mindedness. We need more of that. So, anyway.
Well, Palmer.
Oh,
we'll give Bill a few more minutes to ferment his thought process there.
Well, I think a lot of times for me, you know, my perspective on scale very much is proportional to where I started from and where my reference point is. And so for me, my reference point is 28 mils. That's how I started painting miniatures. And so everything above that is big and everything below that is small. Mm-hmm. If I had started with other things, like if I was a different kind of player, you know, that maybe it would be totally different in the way I would view it, you know, but that's kind of the way I view it. And for me, 28 to 32 from like a painting miniatures where I'm trying to kind of, be a bit more showy, like in like what I'm doing, you know, the 28 to 32 is sort of where it's at, you know, like, and from that perspective. But as time has gone on, I've when I never thought, kind of like similar to what Dan was saying, where I never thought I would ever do anything else, I've taken an interest through YouTube and seeing what other people do in other scales. I am actually, I said this, I think, in the last show from the last season last year when I talked about how I was going to be doing my 15s for AD&D like this summer or whatever. Mm-hmm. I am thinking of doing, I've been drawn to, in particular, doing the AD&D battle system stuff. And I got in my mind my hobgoblins and the toadmen, you know, that the frogmen army that I've got, like with the lizard men, like just that whole sort of army. And I just decided, I really decided I'd want to try to work out them. And for me, the thing that's neat about 15 is that they're smaller enough that they're almost like the perfect scale within the middle of the spectrum of what I would paint. And the reason I say that, even though I don't play 15 mil, the reason why I think they're kind of like the perfect scale is that they do make them detailed enough that they're nice miniatures that you can actually paint nicely. But then they also are smaller enough, just enough that you can get a sense of mass on the table that you can't get with 28s. But they're more detailed enough that you can do more painting fun and like work than you would with scales below it in my experience and what I've seen. So for fantasy, which I don't really like to paint fantasy just very generic to the point where it's like 3 colors and on the table, like, because they're in general fantasy stuff is kind of cool. Like it's got a lot of variation. And so the 15s is enough with some good 15 mils that I think I can probably get the best of both worlds. And so I'm kind of looking forward to that. Now, having said that, since we're kind of, Dan just shouted out Stig's channel. There was a guy, and I've mentioned him on here, Loki Greathall, and he doesn't do videos anymore, but he did a lot of Vikings and dark. He did a lot of Dark Ages.
I've seen his stuff.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I was really inspired by, by his channel when looking at all of the smaller scale stuff, and in other people too. Like when you see Dark Ages that are really colorful and you see like there's not necessarily a lot of detail in the miniatures, but when they're all massed on the table and you see like all of these colors, kind of like medieval, but like just all these colors, and just you almost look like you're looking down on a battle, like like that's what it looks like. And then you can play a big battle, which is harder to do with the other ones, like we were saying. That's appealing to me. So I actually, because I've never really been interested in the past in playing Ancients, I have a bit of a desire to play the game that actually, To the Strongest, that Fraser's been putting on his channel. I really want to play To the Strongest, and I really want to try that with Ancients, and I'd really like to try it with 6 mil, I believe. And to me, that would be totally new, and it would be a totally different way to paint. My objectives would be very different, in the way I'd be doing everything.
Yeah.
Looks like we got some folks just coming on the show. Chevalier Griffin and Chris Walkabout Games. Hello, gentlemen.
Yeah, hey.
Talking about scales tonight, drinking a bit of champagne for the last episode, and as well as other things. Even had some music to celebrate. But yeah, I guess I see the value in all of them, and I'll be honest, because I'm interested in the 6 mil. Sometimes my extreme nature that says, well, if you're going to go 6 mil, like what is this 2 to 3 mil that people are doing? Like,
I know.
And it makes me think about, well, if you're going to like that for that reason, then why aren't you considering going even a step further, and so I've even considered like looking at what some of these tiny scales look like 2 to 3 mil. And so it's not even about like a painting project in the way it is with doing 28 mil or doing a bust. It has nothing to do with that, but it's just like a gaming project, and just there's a craft component to it, but it's not exactly the same.
That's what I think's intriguing about it too, is to try. It's sort of like your same draw to trying a bust is like just trying to see what you can do with it, trying something new, and pushing because painting 10 mil in particular, I assume 15 to some extent, it's a different process, right? Even like painting your 6 mil, right? I mean, because I'm assuming you have to use more sharp contrasts. you know, you don't do subtle shadings.
Yeah.
You know, you need to indicate that this is a piece of steel as opposed to, you know, it's especially when you get down to 10 mil, I think, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did know a guy that used Army Painter on some of the 10 to 15 mil, and it looked wonderful on World War II models. It really looked good, like because of the contrast you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of people really have a lot of strong feelings about the dip, you know, Army Painter dip in particular, because I use the inks, which I don't even consider to be of the same kind of, you know, line, you know, like they're totally different.
Yeah, right.
But the dip, like the old, you know, like the way that people use the dip out of the can.
Yeah, the old dip.
If you use that stuff in certain applications, it really can be really good. I mean, like, you know, I know it's not something that people go into painting competitions using, but it's, you know, because you can't do a lot of after effects over it as easily and things. And but if you want to paint like a smaller scale army and have higher contrast, it's great.
There he is. There's Exhibit A.
Feels like, did you say that there is anything wrong with Army Painter dip? Excuse me? There you go.
Oh, that's awesome.
Nothing wrong with using it. I mean,
I've never used it. Yeah. Do you brush it on, Bill, or do you actually dip them?
I brush it on.
Yeah, yeah.
You don't take it and throw it at the wall, like flick it. Like
I've seen that.
Flick and dip. Like Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Dip and flick.
Yep. God.
Well, you know, it's like Brad said, 6 mil is where I started. In some ways, I could say I started in 6 mil with BattleTech.
Mm-hmm. Oh, true. Yeah.
Because that's 6 mil, even though they're big.
Yeah,
it's still 6 mil.
35 mil miniatures, tall miniatures, but 6 mil in scale.
Oh, there's Paul Beckus is in there. I just see he commented.
Hello, Paul.
Yeah, we're up to 6 people now. So we had Chris from Walkabout Games. We had Paul Beckus hop in here. Who else? We got Brad. We got Scott. And yeah, I think that's everybody's in there right now. What do you got to say there, Bill?
Well, when I first started this hobby, I was deeply entrenched in the 15 millimeter scale.
Really?
Yeah.
So that's where you started from.
Yeah. Believe it or not, I walked into a game store, didn't know what miniature gaming was, like most people. And then these guys had a huge table set up at the store with 15 millimeter Napoleonics. And I was a kid in high school. I was like, that's cool. And then I jumped in. They invited me in, and that's what started me in the 15 millimeter scale. I drifted from that scale over the years, though.
Is the eyesight got worse?
Well, I went from 15 to 6 mil. Played a bunch of Micro Armor stuff, and also BattleTech. And then I jumped into 15 millimeters again with like Zulus and colonialism stuff, Victorian wargaming, and also DBA with Ancients. And then I got into the 28 millimeter 40K stuff because nobody was playing the other games that I was playing.
Yeah.
And Warhammer Fantasy, and I got into that scale.
So when you think of miniature gaming, Bill, like when somebody just thinks of like miniature gaming, you just think of miniatures. What is the size of miniature that comes to mind first when somebody talks about like painting miniatures or playing with miniatures? Like, is there like a particular scale that comes to your mind, in your mind, when people talk about to you, like, what do you do and you think of it?
Well, these days I'd say 28 millimeter scale.
So even though you started at 15, like you don't revert back to that and think of that, like you think of 28. Yeah. Okay.
If you asked me that question 10 years ago, I would be, I was neck deep in Flames of War. I would have told you a 15 millimeter scale.
Yeah.
So what do you enjoy painting the most, or what if everybody played every scale, what would you choose?
These days, I tend to like to paint the details in 28 millimeter scale. Although sometimes I do miss like doing the. You don't have to do as much detail with the smaller scales, and you can crunch out a ton of miniatures in the same time frame as the 28. So sometimes I miss the productivity of the smaller scales.
Certainly.
And yeah, that's one of the things that I'm starting to think about. Since I've got a resin printer, I was thinking about printing some smaller scale stuff.
I always worry about the eyesight too. I mean, I don't know how old you are, Bill, but mine's not so good. So I'm always thinking maybe I missed the 10 window.
This we just work.
Yeah, I already use reading glasses in light, and it's just.
I use these on top of my glasses.
Yeah. Okay.
No, glasses for your glasses.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know. That's the other reason I haven't tried my 10s yet, because I don't know if it's just going to frustrate me or not. I'll have to paint over a white undercoat, I think, enough to be able to see the details.
The one thing is, this is almost a separate topic.
Yeah.
The moment you put something like this on, you're probably going to be like, never not want it on again. And you actually probably, for me, the moment I started using this, I actually, it was like there was a time when I didn't use it, and then I just decided to try it. And then once I tried it, it was like, I can't believe what I haven't been seeing. You know what I mean? Like, and I've just not stopped using it since.
So is that a particularly good one or
this
brand?
Is cheap. I got this at Michael's. I think it's called an Optivisor. It only has a 2 times and a 3 times magnification. I actually use the 2 times because it's a fixed magnification. How close you put the miniature to your face and can keep it in focus is directly related to the magnification. And I don't feel comfortable with the larger magnification, the 3 times. I have to use the 2 times because I can keep it enough away from my face where I'm not like this. But no, I actually really like it. It's very cheap.
Because there's some expensive ones out there, and they've got like 5 different or 10 different, lenses, and I'm like, I don't know.
I use just the basic 2 times, and it actually. I got it with a Michael's coupon, because you can get the coupon.
Yeah.
So I think I paid like $20 to $30 for it.
Okay. I might just need to try that.
Just beware once you try it.
That's fine. If it works, I'll wear it all day. I don't care.
It's like I use 2.5 reading glasses when I'm doing my painting.
Okay. I use 2.0, I think. Reading glasses.
Yeah, it's like the 2.5 just bring things right in.
Yeah.
And making sure you got enough light, especially when you get older like us.
Yeah.
Old 50-year-olds plus.
Well, that's when I first noticed. I kept thinking, well, I need more light, and I've got like 3 lamps, right? I mean, it's like the sun, and I still can't see. I'm like, okay, it's not the light.
Well, that can be worse. It takes out all the contrast. You don't.
Oh yeah.
If you wash it out, it's like hard.
Yeah, true.
So. Chris of Walkabout Games here. He said my eyes are getting bad. And I find that I can hide mistakes more with the smaller scales.
Yeah, well, my eyes are getting so bad I can hide the mistakes on the 28 mils because I can't see those either. But Paul says the jeweler's visor is the best thing he ever bought. So, yeah, yeah, I might give that a try. It can't be worse.
Paul says mine costs $100. Got 5 lens, very comfortable to wear.
Okay, see, yeah, he got a nicer one. I've looked at some of those. I don't know which brand. There's one that really, I don't know, Paul, if you put up what you got, because there's one brand that looks like it's probably like the Cadillac one to get, but it is, it's like 100 or 100 and something. And I didn't know, I was afraid then he'd spend that, and I didn't like how it felt, or the lenses weren't right, or so then I just kind of don't do it.
Definitely, if you got, like Chris says, I have so much light in my room now. Now, if you can grow plants and they grow well, you got plenty of light then.
Yeah, that's a good indicator.
Yeah. Well, I suppose it's on to me, right?
Yes, sir. We know you've done every scale.
Pretty much. I first started off. I remember back in '81, we bought some Grenadier 225 scale for our D&D sessions, and I remember first time I walked into a game shop, and I think it was 80, because everything was like what KB Toy kind of thing.
Yeah,
we got our D&D stuff.
Yeah,
all over Avalon Hill board games. And then one day, it's like we were walking in the mall, and it's like, there's a new shop. Okay. Walked in there, like, wow, what's this, miniatures? What are these things? And it was like looking at a box, and it was like, whoa, this is cool. And the guy comes over and says, oh, those are 28 or 25 mil miniatures. Like, I'm not sure exactly what that means, but. And he's like, comes over to the case, and he had some painted up, and he was like, you can do that? So we bought them. Lo and behold, they weren't painted. They were made of lead. So
yeah, actual lead.
Stayed that way for a long time before I actually painted them up. But then when we got into Battletech, that was when we got it first. We found out that's what, 6 mil. And it's like, still they're large. Battletech miniatures are large, even though they're 6 mil scale. But,
right.
It wasn't until we got started playing Epic, Warhammer Epic, and those are 6 mil, and that's where it's like the little 6 mil infantry and stuff. They're little bitty guys, and everything was small scale, and it's like, wow, okay. I seen those, and these work great for Battletech. And that's one of the reasons I got into it, because I wanted it for Battletech. And then next thing you know, we're playing, Epic all the time too.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it's like you can paint a large Epic army really quick because you have no real details.
Right.
Yeah, that's the wonderful thing. Is like you can mass produce an army really quick in 6 mil.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had a local group in Des Moines, this was what started in the 90s, early 90s. We started getting into 25, 28 mil Warhammer Fantasy, playing that. And Rogue Trader got into 25, 28s there. Got really experienced with Citadel stuff, and it's like, wow, this is like, now you're going from small stuff to bigger stuff and actually painting it. And that's where I started honing my chops on really good painting. But we had a local group where we started the Mid-Iowa Wargamers Association, MIA, and it was a club, and everybody in there was mostly historical players. And Mel, who comes on here every once in a while, he had Napoleonics and Civil War, American Civil War, and lots of 15 stuff. And the guy that I'm painting the stuff for right now, he used to be the owner of Alliance Miniatures.
Oh, yeah.
And so he mass produced all kinds of 15 mil stuff from Civil War and Napoleonics. And I just started going hog wild and buying 15 mils. It's basically, he said, yeah, it's like friends and stuff. It's like you buy it by the pound type of deal.
Wow.
And I had, it's like Mel and both of us still had, at the time, just massive armies. And you just sit there and really, it's like you played your first 15 mil game, and you got that feeling of majestic army on the table because you had so much stuff on the table.
Yeah.
And for the cost of, just maybe a quarter of a Citadel army for fantasy or 40K, you could fill out the entire table.
Yeah.
At 15s. And that's my preferred scale is 15.
It is. Okay.
And when somebody says, what's your favorite scale? 15.
So what's that company that I can't even think of it now, but that you and Mel both get all those fantasy miniatures from. He always has those sales. It's like
at Battle Valor.
Yeah, Battle Valor Games.
Yeah.
Yeah, when he has those sales, that is so tempting. I'm like, oh man, you could buy a whole army for. Yeah, it'd be easy to do.
You could spend $100 to $150 and just fill out the table with a massive army.
You aren't kidding. Yeah, I mean, and then you got to paint the little dudes. But I think that's always where I kind of stop up, just because the amount of time that I have available and the amount of interests I have.
Coming from your perspective, you are a finesse painter. You put a lot of effort into your painting.
Yeah, I enjoy it. Yeah.
And when you look at the difference between a 15 versus 28, you can put effort into them, but you don't have all the details you need to pick out.
Mm-hmm. But do you get the same reward out of per miniature though? It's more, you're going for an overall look more though, probably, right?
The reward to me is the unit.
Yeah, the unit as opposed to figure, right?
Yeah, because you look at it as an individual, there's not as much detail. Mm-hmm. But when you put them as a mass on a block,
that's the finished product.
That's the finished product.
Right. That's true. It is. Right. That's true.
And that's where I really enjoy it. And as I played the same group, they've got some of the guys that have those 6 mil Napoleonics. We paid, Austerlitz?
Yeah.
Game. That the table was over, I think it was about 15 feet long in 6 mil.
Wow.
The whole table was it's like the entire battle was on the table.
Mm-hmm.
Every single unit was representative and you're just maneuvering around. And then it's like, you're looking at a block of troops that's about yay big.
Right.
That was an entire battalion or division or whatever. And you're just maneuvering around. It's like, yeah, they're small, but when you can really put out an entire battlefield.
Yeah, you could do Gettysburg and Waterloo. I mean, when you get down to like 6 mil.
Exactly.
Huh.
And that's the difference between scales, that if you want to do a massive battle, the smaller scales work wonderfully. Yeah. If you want to play a small portion of the battle and just like the skirmish portion of it, then you go the 28s.
Then it's a whole different mindset on mechanics of the game too, I guess, because then you are playing a different game, in a way, right?
Yeah. When you're, say, playing at these guys here, these 28s right here,
mm-hmm.
You're kind of, each unit kind of represents a company.
Yeah.
And then you got each block's like a company, and you might have a battalion.
Mm-hmm.
Your footprint of your battalion may be this big.
Mm-hmm.
Well, at 6 mil, your footprint this big might be the entire division.
Right.
So it just scales down, and you're fighting divisions versus companies or whatever you want to look at.
Well, and then by the time you get down to like 6 mil, it comes more into like command and control type, as opposed to, like how many, like bolt action, as opposed to doing a 6 mil Napoleonics. That's a whole different gaming mentality. Even though you're both playing with miniatures on a table with terrain, it's a whole different game.
Yeah, there's instead of removing, it'd be similar to like when we were playing Land of the Free. Mm-hmm. You're not removing miniatures, you're removing quality.
Yeah, exactly. They all call it something, but you're diminishing their quality or their fighting effectiveness. And but yeah, it's because I always wondered too, will I enjoy that as much? Because I have such a limited repertoire of games that I've actually played more than once or twice, where I really feel like I grasp the game and I really understand it. And so I guess that's part of my mindset, is where I'm coming from basically is 28 millimeter bolt action, right? That's my foundation that I know. And so everything is kind of, where does it fit from that? And I don't know if the reason I love it so much is because that's where I started and where I first actually got my first real miniature game in with an opponent, or or if it's the genre that grabs me or the scale, because as you've seen, I like on the train, even I like to overdo that a little bit, and you don't get into that level of detail probably when you're doing 10 mil,
Mm-hmm. Well, it brings up
So
an interesting point is that was it EZ8 Battleground?
Mm-hmm.
You can play that in 15 or 28.
Okay.
I don't see why you couldn't play bolt action at 15.
You could. The trick is like a squad. Technically, it's individual guys and individual line of sight. So you'd have to individually base them.
Yes.
In which you could not go below 15 and really do that successfully.
Now you have to make it's like we always had them on small little bases.
Yeah.
On small base. And you could play it. We've done it before. It's just it gives you a different mindset of how.
Yeah.
And you're kind of playing larger scale battles instead of like company or platoons versus each other. You're playing like almost a battalion.
Yeah, or you could do triple platoons or dual platoon. There's already rules for dual platoon, so you could stretch it out. But yeah, because like each individual figure is supposed to be within an inch of each other, and then what percent of the unit is in hard cover or no cover. That's how you determine the cover.
Yeah.
And if this guy actually has line of sight, or if only 3 guys have, so you couldn't probably go below 15 on that. But they say the ranges actually make more sense at 15 mil. But anyway, yeah.
Brad said that he'd seen someone painting bolt action in 15 mil, so it can easily be done.
Yeah. Of course, you can do anything. I've seen people playing. What is it? Kings of War in? Is it 15 or 10? They do. Have you seen that?
No, I have
a couple of channels, and they have beautiful tables and beautiful miniatures, and they call it Kings of War Mini, or it's something, and it's a whole thing. And because especially with 3D printing, they can get all these small figures, and on Kings of War, it's not individual removal. It's the stand, when the stand is finally diminished, it's removed, right?
Yeah.
And
well, that's kind of similar in principle to just doing Epi Apocalypse and just playing Warhammer Apocalypse rules, which are meant for 28 mil, but playing them with the 6 mil or the 8 mil. Like people do it. In that case, I think because Apocalypse in Warhammer is so oftentimes centered around the big machines, like the Titans and things. Mm-hmm. The fact that you can still see them very well and have Titans that can go from here to here in height, it's still attractive,
Right.
But then instead of having, like in True Apocalypse, having like a gazillion 28 millimeter models on the table, you can just paint up these and it's much more manageable.
Yeah, that's true.
And so it's kind of a similar idea, I think, in some ways.
Yeah, that's where you look at when I first started in Epic, with 6 mil stuff there. So I think now Apocalypse stuff is 10 mil.
Well, the thing is the Titanicus, they moved to 8 mil from 6, but Apocalypse is still played with 28 mil.
Okay.
Like actual Apocalypse. So like if you take the Apocalypse rules, each stand has 5 Space Marines on it. It's like a stand of 5 Space Marines. Whereas when I play, or what I'm going to be playing, like with the way we're doing it and the way they do it in the Apocalypse forums, is you have 5 28 millimeter or bases, but with like 5 little guys on each, and so you really have like 25 guys like on each one of those stands instead of 5. So it just makes it a bit more of a grander kind of look, in some ways, if you're looking for that. But
speaking of grander look, there is a fellow that just moved here to Tucson. He just retired. He was living on the East Coast, and he brought with him a huge collection of 40 millimeter Victorian colonials and also American Civil War in 40 millimeter.
Nice.
Wow.
And I'm like, I feel outclassed.
How many is he you're talking about though? Like how many is he?
I've not actually seen his collection in person. I just seen photos.
So what do you get a sense of? Like, what's kind of numbers?
I see hundreds of miniatures on the table.
Wow,
so.
That's amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I look forward to coordinating a meeting with this guy and playing a game. So,
that would be cool.
Yeah,
but that you won't see very often.
You got Tim from Broken Dice. He's doing the 54 mil.
Yeah, he's been doing that off and on for the last year plus. Yeah.
So he's going to have a whole bunch of 54 mil Vikings when he's all done.
That'd take me. I'd be painting on one of those. Each figure would take me 2 weeks.
Well, they're fairly large. It's like each one of them's almost a dioramic effect by themselves.
Yeah. He does a nice job with those. Yeah.
See, I don't think I'd want to jump in that pool. And the reason why is that over the years, I've built up terrain for 15 millimeter scale and 28 millimeter scale. Yeah. I don't think I'm ready to jump in the pool, a deep end with 40 millimeter scale terrain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the reason I struggle with even doing my 10 or, that's at least smaller. The bigger you go, the more detailed the terrain needs to be.
I would look at it as your 28 mil terrain is now becoming shrubbery.
Small trees.
You're not trees. It's like Chris here said, anyone else start with air figs, 20 mil figures?
Well, the plastic.
Yeah. The old air figs, and the soft plastic. I did not.
I bought some for my son because he had to do a report. He wanted to do a Civil War battle. And I was like, well, I don't want to buy him a whole bunch of miniatures, for it's like they had over at Hobby Lobby Airfigs box, Civil War box, and I was like, here you go. It cost me $20 or whatever it was, and said, here you go. Don't make your diorama with that. If they don't come back, I don't care because I have no use for 28 or 20 mil. I mean.
I used to, back when I was a kid, or in my early teens, I did a lot of 1/72 scale plastic model kits, and some of World War II stuff in particular, and some of them were Airfix kits, but I never did the boxes of soldiers. No.
Yeah. Well, when it comes down to scales, I'm kind of set. We're 3 different sets. It's like either 6 mil, 15, and 28.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I see guys that Mel, he has some 20s. Him and his brother bought a bunch of 20s, and they played each other early in their years using 20 mil. And it's like, well, you want to get it? It's like, no, I don't want to buy 20 mil because I already have 15s and I got 28s. It's just, when it comes to historicals, I'm kind of set. It's like, it has to fit into those match up.
Well, you have to limit yourself at some point. I mean, you don't have to, but if you're going to, depending on the amount of time you have, yeah.
When it comes to historicals, if it's the same, like say World War II, a 28 mil miniature from one line should fit into another line with no problem.
Yeah.
And when you look at 20s and 28s, they don't match up. So,
well, is Flames of War, is that 20 mil?
15.
It is 15. Okay.
Yeah. I always find most people's trees are undersized anyway in 28 mil. Like when you look at it,
they are.
They are. I walk outside of my house and all the trees are bigger than the trees are compared to the miniatures that and the trees that I play. But at the same time, there is a variety. You can always justify anything. Like you can always say this is just an apple orchard or whatever.
Yeah, but you're right. I've thought about the true scale tree. Some of them should be a lot bigger than what we have. Yeah, you're not wrong.
I just chopped down the neighbor's tree today because they had the storm. We had the storm roll through the other night. One of their trees fell down and into the neighbor's yard and crushed their fence and stuff. And I went down there and chopped it up for her. She's like 80-something years old.
What a good guy.
Yeah, it's like she was out there with her little handsaw going, trying to cut. I was like, oh, I don't need your help. I can do it. And I was like, nope, move back. I'll be done with this thing real quick here.
Speaking of proper sizing, I actually think for the longest time, a lot of times the horses in 28 mil were sized to the trees and not to the guys.
Yeah, they look like ponies. Although you find out like some of the Roman cavalry, they were small horses though, right?
Well,
but yeah.
But when you see some of them and they look like they're giants riding them, like you almost feel sorry for the horses.
Yeah, like the feet are dragging on the ground.
Yeah, it's like or
little horse pony or something.
Yeah,
they're riding. Yeah.
We watched that movie, The Northman, last night. I was talking to Palmer about it. It's a real good movie, but they were in Iceland and they're walking. They have all these horses. We're talking the big giant war horses, big muscular giant like Clydesdales
and Percherons, yeah.
And I'm like looking at those like, no, they wouldn't have that. It's like most of the horses at those times were small.
Yeah, they were smaller.
Yeah. So that was like historical error here.
Use what they could find nowadays. You got to use real horses.
True, and it's like it looked like they were using whatever they could find that was local enough to allow people to ride.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you have a chance, it's a good Icelandic saga movie.
Yeah, I've got to see where I can. It doesn't seem like there's anywhere around me or in this country that I can stream it from that I stream typically from. So I have to.
What are you watching it on, Rusty, or do you stream it?
Redbox.
Oh, 10.4. Okay.
Yeah, it's like you either stream it through Redbox or you can just go to the disc thing and punch your code in and get it.
Yep.
I think we watched it and it cost us like 65 cents to watch it.
Well, that seems fair enough.
That's pretty reasonable.
Yeah, that's like very reasonable. That's the nice thing about Redbox.
It's like my wife and I are watching the English game now, which is a soccer game. About soccer in the 1870s in the UK.
What's that on?
Netflix.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's good stuff so far.
Let's see. We got any other comments? I haven't thrown up here yet.
Paul says 40 millimeter bolt action would be nice.
Yeah,
you could do it. There aren't so many guys, but this still comes down to the terrain and then the ranges then, but it would be gorgeous.
Well, the 40 mil base wouldn't be much bigger, so.
Well, Dan, I mean, just to be able to paint up all your terrain all over again and build it all again just to be 1/3 the size bigger, not even half bigger, just 1/3, like 1/3 the size bigger, that would make it worth it because you like doing that.
You're right, but I've started my Stalingrad table now, and that's going to take me a couple of years to get done. I can't even go that far in the future.
Speaking of, are you planning on adding on to that with foam core?
On the piece that I held up?
I mean, more buildings made out of foam core.
Oh, I'm going to make one that's going to be out of foam core, but otherwise I'm using some resin buildings that I got from Frontline Games.
Okay.
So it'll be a mix, but it's going to be a lot of destroyed brick buildings and factories. And I've got a lot of stuff collected up. It's going to be epic it's going to be a slow process though.
You could do the chimney forest. That's a cheat for Stalingrad.
Yeah, because I've seen pictures, and that's all you get more on the outskirts of town where all the homes burned, but the chimneys are still sticking up.
Oh yeah,
chimney forest, yeah.
And
they were brick.
Well, you just go in and you buy yourself a whole bunch of plaster Paris, and you get yourself a mold, and you make yourself a whole bunch of rubble piles.
Mm-hmm.
And put your little spot in there where you're going to put the chimney, and you make your 1,000 different rubble piles out of plaster Paris, and then you stick your chimneys in. There you go.
I could be done by this weekend then. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Chimney forest.
Chimney forest. Well, there'll be some chimneys.
It could be Berlin. It could be any of the cities on.
Well, and that's what I'm trying to make it generic enough that it could be Berlin, and that's why the rubble bases. I'm not going to use snow on mine. This will be like September, October, Stalingrad, not November, December. Gives it a little versatility.
Well, we did pretty well for one topic in an hour and 16 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
Not including our introductions.
Yeah.
It's actually
we spent almost an hour on the topic.
Well, I enjoyed hearing everybody's. It's fascinating to me, I guess, because it's a thing that I haven't known there was that many scales for very long. I knew Flames of War kind of in the early 2000s. Otherwise, I didn't really see any smaller scale stuff. I didn't know anybody that was painting anything. But now after playing enough games and painting enough stuff and watching a lot of YouTube, I definitely see the intrigue, and and now that with the 10 mil, at some point I'll get them on the table and start seeing what I think. And
did you watch Justin Berman on the Musty channel or Facebook page? He posted his latest work.
Yeah, I did. What was it? I'm trying to remember now. I mean, I just was.
He did up that small unit of what do you call it? American Civil War. It's it's the new Warlord Games 12 mil.
Yeah, or 13, isn't it? Technically,
12.5, I think.
Okay, yeah. The epic stuff. I'm intrigued by that too. Not as much. I don't know. For some reason, I'd be more into wanting to do metal minis that I place that are individual as opposed to ranked up. I know they will paint quicker like that, but they would be a little less uniform. You could use a little creativity on your basing that way in American Civil War.
But gorgeous. If someone was going to get into American Civil War and they had no skin in the game, nobody in your group, it might be the way to go.
It'd be brilliant for cost and I think ease of painting and the starter boxes they've got are well done, and then you can flesh it out if you decide you like it with quite a bit of other units that they've come out with.
Yeah. So, but when you look at it, you can play 6 mil, 10 mil, 12 mil, 15, 18, 20, 25, 28, 32. Those are all game scales.
Very common game scales, really. Yeah.
Because now you look at fantasy and 40K from Games Workshop. That's all 32.
Yeah. Yeah.
It used to be 28s. Now it's 32.
I think the other thing that keeps me a little on the sideline is the fact that, again, not that I paint to game, because I know that I paint way more than I game, obviously. But if I were to want to get a game in, there are people in my area or Omaha, which is not so far away, or that game tournament I go to, I could do a Kings of War Army or something, and actually know I would have opponents. Where on this, I'd have to definitely paint up both sides, and I wouldn't have any trouble finding somebody that would play. My brothers would play, and Rusty would play, or I can play solo. It wouldn't, or Mark would play, but it's just a matter of, on the 28s, I know if I just painted up almost anything in 28, there's somebody around that has another 20, that I could find to play.
I gotta just have a sidebar here for a moment. As we're talking about various topics and we're talking about various comments, Paul was talking about some miniatures, and Chris from Walkabout Games says, "Awesome, Paul. I have a few of those miniatures and they're amazing." And then we're talking about the Chimney Forest, and Chris says, "I've just started printing the Chimney Forest." And then we're talking about ACW, and Chris says, "I'm on my first ADCW Epic Brigade. I'm about halfway done." And if the things that we're talking about, if he's doing each thing right now that we're talking about randomly, I need to see his hobby room, because he probably has like 50 things going on right now. It's like he's got to. Chris, you have to do a video of a snapshot of everything that's going on right now, because I think you most likely. I don't think we just hit 3 things randomly. I'm sure you have a lot more going on. I know you're doing the Vietnam and there's other stuff too.
Well,
I didn't realize.
And how many printers? It's like in the background you see. It's like 4, 5, 6 printers going at all at once, printing stuff off.
I didn't realize all those comments were from Chris. I was reading them, but I thought it was 3 people.
It's like start talking about Star Wars Legion. I've just finished an intergalactic whatever army just right now.
It's like if you ever watch the Plastic Crack podcast and that Dom, he cranks out more miniatures in a week than I do in a year. Not far from that being true. Yeah.
It's funny.
Yeah, that guy's a machine.
He is a machine, and it's not like Golden Demon, but it's pretty darn nice looking stuff he does. It's. He says he's a gamer first, and he wouldn't. He said he wouldn't even paint. If he could buy them, he'd just buy them and game.
Yeah.
So.
Well, there's been times when I've been a painting machine where I could paint multiple units in a week. It's just that motivation is kind of low and extra stuff going on around the house. It's hard to get going.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been busy too. The motivation's high, but the time is low.
Yeah.
I actually find that even with when my motivation is low, even when I have time, I don't want to do that. I just want to I want to consume entertainment. I don't want to create. I want to it's so much easier to consume, which is probably another whole hobby topic. But you can actually how you consume your entertainment, and consume others, creativity versus doing your own creativity and the energy you put into that. It's a lot easier to consume than it is to create, I find.
Agreed.
And I actually, many of I was involved with a business startup that was 3 years in the making and started last fall, and I've still not recovered in the sense of my time and energy to hobby. Yeah. I'm still at a point where I'm now, I only sat down at the hobby table late fall, and then it's been a slow go, and I've been happy with some of the stuff I've done. I'm starting to get a good balance, but yeah,
it takes a lot out.
Many days I come home and the only thing I want to do is not this.
Same. I know I get exhausted, and I think I'm just monumentally always exhausted anymore. But I do find, because I get in the funk too, where it's been a long week, long day, and I'm like, I want to go down, and then I'm like, but I just want to sit and I'm going to watch a movie or I'm going to watch some YouTube videos and go to bed. But I find if I actually just come down here, sit down, start looking around, and 9 times out of 10, pretty soon I'm just like, this is awesome. This is, it's just, for some reason, it sounds like a job for, when you're just really just exhausted mentally and emotionally and physically, when you're just, but it's refreshing then if I just sit my butt in the chair 9 times out of 10. Occasionally I'll sit down and I'm like, it's not happening, but most of the time I find that if I hadn't come down, I would have thought I couldn't do it. But then I just have a blast if it's even just for 35 minutes, and then I go back up.
Yeah. But, well, and I don't know if you're not like a Warhammer enthusiast, you may not know the channel Girl Painting. She's been around a really long time, like early YouTube, and she's still around. But when she just, I think she was just the first person I had to say this. I think a lot of people would say this, but she just said, if you want to get motivation to paint, just sit down and start painting, and, really, there is a degree of that. I mean, it's like if you want to, if you're somebody that wants to get onto the treadmill, then just get onto the treadmill and you'll enjoy it once you start doing it a couple.
It's thinking about it, yeah.
Yeah, it just depends on whatever it is that you're sort of putting off, But I found that after I painted those 2 Marvel miniatures, just coming down and grabbing and deciding which one I was going to paint next and getting them primed and assembled, and then being in front while I was assembling, being in front of my other miniatures I have to finish, and then starting to paint some things on those. One thing leads to another. You're sitting in your hobby space, and then all of a sudden, an hour and a half goes by, and you actually feel like, hey, it's dinner time, and I actually did something, or whatever, And
that's so true.
That was my Sunday, But
well, that's nice if you got a couple things. Like sometimes, I'm for whatever reason, this is the first bolt action army I'm painting eyes on my troops. I don't know why I'm doing that, but I'm doing it. And like if I have to come down and it's like that's what's happening next, maybe on one of those nights that isn't the place to start. But I've got my next unit that I can be getting ready to prime, or the piece of terrain. I don't have 10 things going on, and they're all part of this same project. But some days I'm not, feeling doing that kind of intense. But maybe getting some base coats on that next unit. So. And then, pretty soon you're just like, man, it's time to head up. It's 10 o'clock or whatever,
Definitely.
So,
Chris does
4 printers. I'll give him my address. He can send one to me because I'd like to give it a try.
Now that was an ongoing saga with me. It's like I came really close, and I missed out twice now. Was that they had the Elegoo Saturn, where they had it on sale. It's like you get a Saturn S. I think it was like $350.
Yeah, I remember you last show. You mentioned you just missed it.
Yeah, and it's like I came up to it, was like, oh, it's on there. So I better go get the credit card. And it's like come back, oh, it's over.
Boy, but I think you're finally you're committed now though, and then you got the fair coming up, right? So you'll have some, hopefully.
I figure maybe by the time fair hits, I'll definitely get one by the time the fair is over.
Cool. I'll be really closely following your take on that too, because that's still on my.
Which is interesting is that Mel has one. They have the Mars, Elegoo Mars, and I keep asking, it's like, you getting that thing going yet? Well, I got to move stuff around to make room for it so I can use it. And I was like, oh, I would have been moving stuff a long time ago. I was like chucking.
I had mine going the day that I got it.
Yeah, that's the way I'd be too. What do you have, Bill, for a 3D printer?
I have the Elegoo Mars, and I printed up so many miniatures that I don't think I'll ever that's long enough to paint them all.
The same problem.
And then I have the Ender 3 filament printer, and I print up this terrain here for
that's sweet
for Frostgrave and all sorts of other games, and also printed up a whole bunch of ships for Blood and Plunder.
That's right.
So I love my 3D printers. Is just that finding the time to paint all the miniatures I've printed is.
It's that old thing again. It's like it doesn't take long to rip out the credit card and buy miniatures.
Place an order.
Or now it's like doesn't take long to print out an army. But
did you think there was much of a learning curve, Bill, on those printers, or not too bad?
Yes and no. The filament printer, I would say, is the deep end of the pool when it comes to knowledge.
Okay.
It's a steep learning curve and a lot of tinkering that you have to do to make sure that thing is running.
Okay.
The resin printer is easy mode.
Yeah.
Really? Okay.
That's my exact experience. Even today, it's the filament printer is a bit more finicky. Like I can come up with a failed print a lot easier on a filament printer than on the resin. Resin is very much, a lot of it is set it and forget it. I mean, like there is some messing around with supports in the software or whatever, but beyond that, the actual physical process of it is simple in comparison.
Yeah.
Do you ever worry, like the printing resin miniatures, that 5 years, 10 years from now or whatever, that they'll either get like brittle or any kind of a chemical process or a sunlight process, anything like that? That crosses my mind sometimes.
Yeah, I honestly haven't printed as many miniatures as I stated. I printed about 3 armies worth, and the resin is just like any other resin. It's super brittle.
Because there's lots of kinds of resin you can choose, right?
Yeah, there are some that are less brittle. There are some that are there are all different kinds, right, Bill? There's different ones in hardness and flexibility. But sometimes the hardness and the brittle is what you want. Because sometimes you want it to be something that is going to be tougher on the gaming table, and things like that. And then sometimes just depends on what you're doing. But I mean, my answer to that is that as far as me worrying about like with sunlight and over time and over the years, things, sort of decaying and just, deteriorating. I think if you leave any of these like any sort of plastic or resin miniatures, even ones that are commercially made, if they're actually let out in the sun or like put out in front of a window that the sun is going to come through every day, like they're going to deteriorate, right? Like just like in the same way, like your products that you have that are plastic that you leave in the backyard, the sun just destroys them over time, right? Like
absolutely.
And so, but if you treat them the way you typically treat your miniatures, like when it comes to the sun and like that kind of piece, I wouldn't worry about it. And the UV is what cures them. And so people will even like put
them in the sun. I've seen,
yeah. Well, what people will do when they get rid of their water that actually has the resin mixture in it, like from cleaning them, they leave it outside for it to cure, faster and just to cure. And so in a lot of ways, the UV is what completes the process. Okay. But I definitely think if you you would be abusing the products if you kind of left them in a lot of direct sunlight all the time. You know what I mean? Like,
what about like if they'd freeze? I mean, just all those things. I'm always thinking, oh man, what happens if and it'd be like, oh, that'd be disappointing. Cause like metal, it's like that's indestructible, right? So,
yeah. Well, I mean, I think,
So I'm always a little nervous about that.
I don't worry about that stuff too much, to be honest. I think as long as I'm keeping them in normal living conditions, it's fine. I mean,
Chris says here, he's a musty wargamer, so I hide my miniatures in my dark, dank game rooms.
So, Bill, you said you think they're a little bit brittle, at least the resin that you're using, or not?
Yeah, I'm disappointed with how brittle they are.
Okay.
I might be just using the wrong type of resin.
What resin do you use by chance?
The water soluble cleanable ones.
Is it Elegoo or is it the Elegoo?
One that's recommended by Elegoo. So.
Yeah, so I use that too. I haven't found them too brittle, but I guess like I've always found resin to be more brittle than plastic.
Right.
And anyway, and so I have found what you said, Bill, like that it's just sort of like any resin that I normally would experience, which is usually brittle, like to some degree in comparison to other things.
Mm-hmm.
But
well, I found that it's like my Battletech stuff I've got that have been 3D printed, and almost every single antenna or kind of part like that have all broke off just by painting them.
Okay.
And it's like you can't have anything that's fine detail with these resin miniatures.
A prominent fine detail.
Like
I'm thinking metal has more resiliency. Although 20 years ago I had a plastic Eldar army, and the Arizona sun decided to give it the chaos warp in the trunk of my car, which was terrible.
That's disappointing. Yeah.
Wow. I laugh about it now, but it was a crying moment.
My brother did the same thing because he would work out at Camp Dodge, drive from Iowa City to Camp Dodge every day, and he was get off work and we'd play 40K together, and during the summertime, he kept leaving his army in the back of his car, and it did the same thing as it started getting the chaos warp going. And he realized he had to carry his armies in with him into his office and then carry him back out when he was done. So,
when I started with Bolt Action, they didn't have plastic tanks for Warlord games. They had all resin tanks. And I actually prefer the resin tanks to the plastic ones.
Me too.
A lot of the ones that I have are resin. And, to be honest, I mean, like, people have always individually liked certain things better than others. I mean, some people like plastic kits more, some people like resin, some people like metal. But I've always liked the heft of solid resin. And although there's a brittleness to it, that's one of those faults. I mean, like, you have to be careful with it. And, I've found these to be very much the same. It's all the stuff that comes to me that I bought that was resin.
Right.
Yeah, and I used two different ones. I started with the Elegoo that Bill was talking about, but I did move to using the alcohol-based. And it was one actually that Chris recommended to me, a brand. And I use Sierra Tech Fast. It's an ABS-like, so it's kind of strong. Kind of ABS is a material, like just like in making homes and for HVAC. ABS is a material plastic that you can use for your regular filament printer, but they call this an ABS-like resin, and it's a bit of a harder resin, and it's supposed to be good for miniatures, for gaming and stuff.
Mm-hmm. I'll have to take a look at that.
Yeah, I can let you know. I'll let you know after the show the one that I use, Bill. But to be quite honest, the one you're using I think is a good resin. Like I actually got good results with it. I just for whatever reason, I wanted to try the traditional isopropyl alcohol base, and when they said it was ABS-like, and a lot of people were using that in the Epic Apocalypse Facebook group, I just decided to try it, and I like the results. So,
yeah, we had some stuff come in here. Paul, he says, how sturdy are the bayonets and rifles and 3D printed resin figures? I could see the bayonets and maybe that kind of stuff of rough handling would break off really easy.
Yeah, I had that experience, just like you were talking about. With what I printed up was samurai and warrior monks, and their swords were just snapping, and their spears were snapping. So yeah, they're just like bayonets and rifles.
Yeah, we had Nick pop in here. He said they don't. The print examples don't hold up to rough handling. I found that, like I've said, is like anything type of fine.
Yeah, it's the fine. Like swords, bayonets.
So like I said, I had BattleTech miniatures that were 3D printed, and just putting on the base coat, it would take them right. Stuff would snap right off.
That's funny. I haven't had. So now, granted, 3D printed is very different whether you're talking about filament printing and whether you're talking about
filament is more sturdier than the resin stuff. I found.
Yeah, I've had different experiences based on what I'm doing. Sometimes it's harder to get a filament printer to print as well, and it can be more of a hollower print by design. But I found that my metal, like you guys that have known me over the years, I love metal miniatures. I mean, I'm one of the biggest fans of metal miniatures. But I'll tell you, like one of my favorite companies, Min and Miniatures, when I get all those bayonets, when I get all the muskets with bayonets, oftentimes they give me extra miniatures because of all the bayonets that break in transit. And these are metal miniatures, so these aren't resin. And so really, I guess it kind of depends on what we're comparing to, too. I mean, like there are a lot of problems even with metal miniatures when there's thin stuff breaking.
I've had, it's like you think stuff breaks now. I had a whole bunch of, the Napoleonics and Civil War. A lot of the early stuff I had was all lead before they started forcing you to go with the white metal stuff. And I'd say a good third of your bayonets would break off just by painting them, because the lead is more flexible. Snap off. Oh, it was not a big deal, but over time, you're going to have that same problem. So it's the smaller scale stuff. You're always going to have stuff that's going to break. And I was going to say, Chris said, I'll let you know how, because he's doing some Napoleonics right now. It had to happen. It's like BattleTech stuff melting in this hot sun. That's the problem with plastics. They'll warp. This plastic gets hot.
Yeah, it does.
And it's like I've had this one too, where flames warp. Those bases will warp, and it's like then they're kind of contorted. The fine stuff can be bad, and I don't cure mine. I just clean them, paint them, and get a flex. Yeah, that's an interesting thing. Is if you don't cure them, they're actually. I've seen videos of that where they're kind of flexible. Like after they're printed out, they'll still have some play with them without. The only problem I've seen people have said is that when they don't cure them, you still have like kind of you can get some bending warpage, especially if you put them in a case or something.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And I have a lot of experience with like the Forge World resin models. They will warp.
Mm-hmm.
It's like,
so you put them in hot water and they warp.
Yeah, then because I usually have to straighten some of my resin buildings out a little bit with hot water before I paint them.
Even after you straighten them out and they look straight and you put them in your case and everything, and over time, depending if they're laying on their side, they will eventually start to
just
bend.
From its own weight.
From its own weight.
Well, we still have another topic to go, I believe.
Yeah, we do.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Bill, topic.
Okay, you're given $500 and you have to start a wargaming project that you've never done before.
$500.
I would say I've never done World War II naval, and I think I would go Victory at Sea and go hog wild into Japanese and American fleets and just go completely into that genre. It's completely different from everything I ever do, and I think it would be a hoot because
it is.
Terrain is just a blue mat.
Yeah. Maybe a coastline or an island or something, and yeah.
I don't know if you ever seen in my Dystopian Wars videos.
Yeah.
And I got the blue. It's like I took two, went to Joanne Fabric and got two sets of fabric that were bluish color with some color to it, and I sewed them together and create this big giant mat. And that's what I used for my World War. Started off with my World War II miniatures, 1/1800 or 1/2400 scale.
Yeah, it's either World War II or just like Dan. I have an interest in the Civil War, but my interest is in the ironclads. Ever since I was a kid and I saw in a coloring book the Monitor and the Merrimack hammering at each other, I thought that is the coolest thing ever. But I have yet to run into a war game about that. I would jump on that, but I don't know.
I've seen there's American Civil War games out there for actual naval combat.
Yeah. Because I would dig the ironclads and stuff. That would be a lot of fun.
That's cool. That'd be fun.
This is something people probably don't know about me. This is because I sold my fleets off back in about 2010, somewhere in there. I had at one time a ship representative for every Japanese ship in their entire Navy, surface fleet, and Americans, along with a smattering of Australians, Brits, and Dutch and French.
The funny thing is that doesn't surprise me.
I really enjoyed playing fleet battle stuff.
I've never done that either. Yeah.
What were the rules you used, Rusty?
What's that?
The rules again?
Well, there was Sea Krieg and
Typhoon, or
well, we did that. Typhoon is Harpoon was another
Harpoon. Yeah, that's what
Harpoon was modern.
Too much champagne.
Well, you could end up with a Typhoon, but my friend and I, we played Harpoon back in the 80s. That's how I kind of got into it. And GHQ has every ship you can imaginable. And nowadays you can 3D print them, Bill. Yeah. If you get them all, you can just print out all the fleets you want. You don't have to worry about stuff breaking off. So yeah, I could definitely. That'd be something I wanted to. I still have some ships left that are still in the packets and stuff. I still have some Japanese and Americans left.
That's interesting, and that's one it seems like, you can find some YouTube videos of people doing, different time periods of naval battles, but it's pretty limited, especially, there's the age of sail has kind of had a resurgence recently in the last few years, but yeah, like World War II and older, you just don't see that much. Yeah. But I knew it used to be more of a thing because you see a lot of those old models like on eBay, even the pack even. And I don't know if that was a thing at one time and went away or just it never really caught on. It was real niche or what? But
it was a niche thing. You could go to a convention back in the 90s. You could go to a convention. You'd find at least one naval game going on.
Really?
And nowadays, that's more
cool.
of a rarity. Even people even do that.
Yeah.
But with Victory at Sea and the companies coming out with the 1/1800 scale stuff that had been hitting the market, it's been resurging. People are like, "Oh, this is so new. I've never seen or heard this." It's like, well, people have been doing it since the forever and a day.
Right.
A lot of it happened because the naval colleges actually wanted the miniatures done so they could war game battles and tactics and stuff.
Right. So, Bill, is that something you think you would, or is that a pipe dream, or would you dabble in that?
I think it's a pipe dream.
Okay.
Because I am entrenched in my other projects.
Yeah. Got no one to say when.
Yeah. I never considered myself.
Thing about those, you don't have to put a lot of detail into them. Because the miniature is like you could have a battleship is only about yay big.
Yeah, depending on scale you choose, sure, absolutely.
You choose the smallest scale possible, like 2400 scale. A battleship is only yay big. Yeah. So you could put a large fleet on a table.
It wouldn't cost you much either. Like you said, you need a blue mat and then your models and a rule set.
Yeah.
Huh.
I don't consider myself much of an expert when it comes to military matters and rooms of historical wargamers, but my grandfather was in the Navy and from World War II, and I, even growing up in the late 70s with a grandfather that was in World War II, that was generations before me. I think that culturally, the Navy and sea battles were a big part of pop culture. In the 60s and the 70s and the 50s. And so when you say that, like, it was popular back then and, we don't see it anymore. I mean, when you think about it, like the way warfare has changed and you think about the way pop culture's changed and the way, and how it's viewed on screen, like you don't see like the Pacific and all of these like, battleships and naval kind of stuff like anymore. And so that's why like it's new to people when something like that comes out now.
Well, yeah. Because when they talk about, the big showcase for the Navy now, always for probably since the 80s has been the aircraft carrier, right? Mm-hmm. So then you're more into the, the Air Force type thing or Top Gun. That's actually a Navy, about Navy pilots, but it's all about the planes, right? Mm-hmm. They launch from the carrier, but that's it.
Yeah. Definitely more coverage.
That's true. I'll bet that's some of it. You're right.
I bet you these days. I was just gonna say, I bet you these days a lot of people don't even know what kind of ships there are actually in a Navy.
No, and you aren't gonna have big gun duels, like big battleships blasting each other like you did in World War II. Now they're mostly missile platforms and stuff that actually are attacking, land targets even more so than each other.
Yeah,
and submarines, which nobody knows what they're doing, but. Yeah, the Navy's a different animal now. Uh-oh.
I see a Ziploc bag.
Some miniatures from the 40s
in search of. It's like, what cubby hole did I put him into? Okay. These are GHQ. What the heck is this thing here? It's Japanese destroyer. No, this is a battleship. You can see basically how big a battleship is.
We need to just work out a trade with Bill, or he prints.
I thought they were a lot bigger than that.
No,
I definitely thought they were a lot bigger than that, Rusty.
No. That's 2400 scale. It's like I'll break open.
Yeah, 21, 24. Because there's like, what are the scales in naval? Is there like 1000 and
common scales are 1800 scale, 1200 scale, and 2400.
Okay.
That is what is a destroyer.
Wow.
So it is small, but you could
paint that pretty fast.
Yeah, there's nothing. There's hardly any details to paint.
Well, it's
so basically, you paint it gray, and if there's a deck, you might put a teak deck on it.
Yeah, just a few spots. Yeah.
And right here, I got 6 Japanese destroyers. I think these are Japanese destroyers. Yep, Japanese destroyers. 6 of them, and I think at the time I bought them, it was about $8 for those.
There
6.
you go. Sell them to Bill for $8 or $4 just to get them gone, and then everybody's happy.
And in here, I think I got about 30 Japanese destroyers.
Cool.
There you go.
It doesn't. It's like if you have a 3D printer, you could print those suckers off really quick.
Hey, you're off and running.
Definitely.
Interesting.
Yeah. And to be honest, I have. I might even have it sitting right here. Yeah, I do. Right there. Pick it up. Come here, you. Oh, I missed it. It's the Battle of Salvo Island. We got the T&E right there, all written up for continuing battle.
It's something that they're handy. That's interesting.
Handy, because every day I am sitting there thinking about restarting, building the whole fleet over again.
Battle of Samar. Is that with Taffy 3?
Yeah.
Oh, man, that's an awesome battle.
You got the Guadalcanal here, first battle, second battle of Guadalcanal, and which is interesting. A lot of these naval battles, the U.S. got their butt handed to them.
I'll tell Midway, yeah.
Well, Battle of Samar is just remarkable. You know, that commander of that American fleet was fearless. And the Japanese were just like, what in the world is going on? And
that's where the destroyer went out.
It's like 3 tin cans, little destroyer, tiny ships, engage entire flotilla of Japanese with a heavy cruisers and battleships. And because they're so aggressive, the Japanese thought that they were a vanguard to a larger fleet.
Oh, okay.
It's like, why would these guys keep coming at us unless they have somebody behind them coming?
Yes.
This is not smart.
And so they fled the battle because they thought it was going to be like...
It's going to be Oh, wow. Yeah, I don't know that battle.
Yeah, there are so many interesting battles that you hear about that happen in the Pacific that, people don't know about.
Yeah, look up Taffy 3. It's remarkable.
3. Okay.
I have a feling that Bill's answer is going to continue to gain momentum in this topic. And so, as we, in the interest of
time,
fully exploring this topic from every facet, I'm going to say, Rusty, continue to look at your pages. And no, Rusty, what is your $500 project if you could do any project?
Well, just looking at Paul's Arab-Israeli Wars in 10 mil, Cold War Commander, Pendrake miniatures in 10 mil. That would be an interesting one to try too.
Huh.
I got Cold War Commander, and I thought about getting involved in that. So, all right, this is something that people know about, but I got the rulebook.
Oh, there you go.
$500 would go a long ways on that game.
Yeah, with plenty to spare, and actually buy some interesting terrain or printer or something.
Yeah.
I wanted to do burros and badgers for a while now. It's like looking at it, it's like for $500. When that topic came up, like $500, and the first thing that popped in my head, burros and badgers.
Yeah, that's.
It's a long way from your initial existential crisis when you were first determining whether you could use small furry animals in a miniature war game. I remember showing it to Rusty, and Rusty, I could literally his face contorting like,
what is happening?
The
rules are fascinating.
And then as time went on, you warmed up to it.
Yeah.
You're not sure. He's not sure how he's supposed to respond to this.
It's like animals fighting each other for food because they eat each other, but actually wearing armor and swords makes it more interesting.
Yes.
Actually, it is. The company. You don't have to use the company's miniatures that make the game, but the company that makes miniatures makes beautiful miniatures. And then the other thing is. For folks that like creative skirmish games that are fantasy based, it has some really interesting rules. I mean, it's almost like an ode to Mordheim in my mind, in some ways, because it's not just a cool game like Mordheim is, but it's added its own stamp on it in the way that like it doesn't have combat the same way, like it has its own unique ways of doing it. So it is a very cool game.
Don't you have some character advancement in it too?
Yep.
Okay, yeah.
And then, it's got just interesting combat mechanics in that, different size animals use different dice and like different polyhedral dice. But then the other thing is, larger animals have the larger dice and have an easier chance of doing more damage, which would make sense. But because critical hits only happen on one side of like a polyhedral die, your smaller animals have a higher chance of getting critical hits. Because basically, like if you're using a 4-sided die, like you always get a critical hit on a 4. So you have a 25% chance of getting a critical hit. So even though most of the time when you're going up against like a larger creature, you're going to have a harder chance of winning because they definitely have a better chance of with more, larger dice, you have a better chance of getting the critical hit. And so it adds a little bit of strategy in that too.
Yes, it's on that wall, Dan.
Yeah, I was just looking. Yeah, I got it over here.
And I've got it too.
Have you played Palmer?
I haven't. I've actually right before my major slump last summer, that's what I was working on, and I have some miniatures painted.
Okay.
I do need to get back to it at one point.
Nice.
See, I just created a problem.
Thanks, Rusty. Like I need another project, I do have the rules though, so
we need to spend time to read it. Because
the nice thing, it's a small rule set too, and then you could get by with 6 or 8 miniatures, right, for a warband or whatever they call it.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Dan. Now that you are a new grandfather of a grandson that wants to get them into wargaming, burros and badgers that basically have like nursery rhyme characters.
How can mom and dad say no to that?
Well, yeah. I mean, like it's like fantasy, and it's got like turtles and like badgers and foxes and cats.
And the train could be all whimsical. They won't.
Yeah, I mean, it's a gateway drug.
Yeah. Okay, well, I got a few years to get this done. That's a good thought. Well said.
So when they're about 4 or 5 years old, you can really get them start going.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, 4 or 5, because he'll be really smart for his age, as your own kids always are, and your grandkids are amazing compared to Can you believe he's 3 and he's doing that? Yeah, that's never been done before at 3.
Unless you got one of those parents that go, "Oh my God, my kid's a slug."
You don't hear that very often until they're like 16, maybe.
Yeah.
Oh shoot, yeah, that's a good one.
So Dan, what is your $500 game that you would, if you had $500, what would be the one you would choose?
Yeah. Well, I didn't know that was the question, so I hadn't thought too long on it. But there's just kind of while we are talking, there's three things that have always been in the back of my mind. One is Blood and Plunder. I'm always tempted by that, and then you'd have to, the rules, and then the thing that's kind of stopped me is the terrain, because again, the whole experience on a tabletop game is to be fully immersed. So, I would have to do full Caribbean, type terrain to do it the way I'd want. So that would be one. And the ships
let me challenge you on that.
Yeah.
You guys know Blood and Plunder well, like Rusty and Bill. It seems to me like that would be more than 500 if you're doing a table and even a decent full side, like not even both sides for two people to play. But am I wrong on that?
500 would get you a long ways in Blood and Plunder.
Would it?
Okay. And the terrain wouldn't have to be. I mean, you could use the China palm trees and paint them. I could do my foam core buildings like I do.
Yeah.
To save money.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't penciled it out.
I also come from a Canadian dollar and a US dollar. 500 US is actually worth more. I'm thinking Canadian, which is worth less. It's true. I mean, 30% less.
Yeah, 600 Canadian. What could you get?
So whatever you're thinking at 500, it's 30% less in my mind.
Yeah, and just the smallest starter band sets that they've had, I've looked at different times. So that's one.
Okay.
Because I'll keep it quick because I know we're short on time. The other thing that I've toyed with, which we kind of talked about earlier, is doing 10, maybe 15 mil ACW. And that I think would be somewhat realistic. The terrain is not expensive, and when you get to that scale, even a town is a couple buildings. You don't have to get too crazy. And I think that is on my list if I had an opportunity like that. And then the third and final one is the old Games Workshop game, Legends of the Old West. Then I could do a Western town. That would not be hard to. I mean, people that do Dead Man. Bill? Don't you do Dead Man's Hand or not?
I do Dracula's America.
Okay, that's what I'm thinking of. Yeah. But I've watched some videos of people playing that game that were just a riot, and it just looked awesome. And it's really based off of the Lord of the Rings strategy battle game. A lot of the rule system is from 2001, 2000. And that's always intrigued me. And again, it's a small warband thing. I'd probably use Black Scorpion miniatures. It appealed to me quite a bit. That's the way I've thought of jumping in on that at some point. But again, haven't done it because it's a whole new table and I got plenty of projects. But those are the three that are always tempting me. And if somebody, if there was this huge sale or something, I maybe would just have a weak moment and jump in.
Bill, didn't you do Knuckle Duster too?
Oh, didn't you?
Didn't you do Knuckle Duster miniatures?
Oh, I bought a bunch of those miniatures, and I also got the
because they have the game rules for
Gunfighter's Ball.
Yes,
rules, and I haven't actually tried the Gunfighter's Ball, but I read through the rules, and I was
underwhelmed.
Yeah, I think that Dracula's America is a cleaner set of rules.
Okay.
Than that one. I'm not into the record keeping as much in my games.
Okay.
So in the Gunfighter's Ball, they have charts where you're hitting people in certain areas of their body, and you got to keep records of how that affects your characters through that.
Interesting. Okay.
If you like that level of detail, then hey, there you go for it.
Okay.
The Dracula's America is not that detailed, so you get hit, you're wounded. It's you're wounded.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Well, and all those Western games, most of them take small tables too, right? I mean, you're not doing a 4x6 table. You're doing a 3x3 or. Yeah, here Paul Beckus says Fistful of Lead is a blast. 6 figures aside, 3x3 table.
Yeah.
So that's doable even for me.
I have a bit of, even though I find them really expensive, in some ways a Western game's a little bit of a holy grail for me because I've never really found a rule set that I wanted to play after looking at it. I always find that, and I think I'm the problem. I think because rules always have limitations, and if you can't just sort of like get into it and appreciate the limitations, and then just try a different game that doesn't have that limitation, then you're never going to play. You know,
Right.
And for me, it's like I don't want something that's just like limited in like your war bands that you have to take, you know, like really limited, and then or like, you know, just very much like movie like Westerns, you know, only, you know, and not like a war game like that incorporates like maybe the period a bit more with larger battles, like, you know, not just, you know. And so I'm always sort of
searching for
something perfect, but the miniatures that I really like are the Foundry miniatures.
They are nice.
I really like them. And they're kind of, they've always been kind of out of my budget when I looked at it. Like I always found them kind of expensive, but I think they're really nice. They're really characterful. Yeah.
I think they're sculpted when the Perry brothers worked for that company.
Okay, is that right?
They may well be sculpted by the Perrys.
I wonder that, Bill. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I think they're really nice. So.
Yeah, I personally like the Dracula's America because it's actually 2 games in one. You can do the game with all the supernatural stuff, or you could do it like a standard Western.
Yeah.
So it's very versatile and it's very fast paced, and also it's mimics the reaction system of Blood and Plunder. So.
Okay.
So that's another thing that it has going for it is it's similar but not exactly the same as Blood and Plunder.
Cool.
We've got a bunch of comments I want to toss up here real quick. All right, we got Chris had just started a modern naval this year. That can be really interesting. That's like Harpoon. We used to play Harpoon, which was a modern.
Yeah.
It's like Paul said, I had got every ship that took place at the Battle of Coral Sea in 1/3000th scale. That's probably
including transports.
Yeah, it's an obsession.
Cool.
There was a time I can understand it. It's like I'm trying to figure out, all right, get every ship in this class, every ship in that class, every ship in this class, and actually make the little. You put them on a little card, you know, the card stock, and you print out the name or write the name on it. It was like, I can totally understand.
I can totally understand that.
Lots of naval on YouTube lately. Yeah, if you just type in what you're looking for, you can find a video on it. I do American Civil War, so my father would really finally take wargaming seriously.
That's cool.
It's like a Nimitz. 2400 scale is like 4 inches long. It's not big. You can throw a lot of miniatures out there in a day. Taffy 3 was the Battle of the Philippines. It was like around the Battle of Leyte Gulf. It's right there. It's like that was an awesome project. Miniature for Badgers are
they're amazing.
Yeah, it's like I looked at that stuff and it's like they're so cool. The mouse is the T4.
Yeah.
Fistful of Lead, Dan, is a really great Western game. Right. We had Fistful of Lead, and there's Fistful of Miniatures, a whole bunch of range of miniature games like that. 6 figures on a slide at 3x3 table.
Yeah.
I want to try out Dead Man's Hand. I have the rules. That's something I haven't got into. Dracula's America. So you got all those miniatures that are games that we've looked into or possibly getting into. Perry's did them. Okay, there we go.
Okay. Found it. Yeah. Cool.
All right. Last but not least.
Maybe the least. I don't know. Well, so
you play
we're waiting.
$500?
Well, one answer is the cop-out answer because it's a game that I haven't played yet, but I literally am just doing it and it perfectly fits this. And that is, you know, I just chose to get into Test of Honor. And Test of Honor, I've definitely not spent anything close. And I even bought an entire foreground village on sale of, buildings that are on their way. And then, between the miniatures and then the rule book, I've definitely not spent 500. And so it's a skirmish game. And I think that's one of the reasons is that, when you're wanting, so when the topic says like you're limited to 500, my assumption is that there are certain things that are more than 500, like to get into. And to me, skirmish games can be an avenue to spend less at times, at least the entryway into it. Yeah. And then the other topic we talked about, the smaller scale, is another avenue. You can play bigger battles, but in smaller scale, and you can kind of get more for your dollar that way.
Right.
Where it's hard sometimes is when you have the bigger scale, like 28 mil, but they're bigger battles. That's when it's hard to, I think, fit within the 500. And so, yeah, I think Test of Honor, doing the samurai Japanese game, totally different genre, totally different table, lots of money to be put into it because I have nothing for it, but it's manageable because it's a skirmish game, and so that works. The only other thing I would say is one that I've not done that is really been on my mind for a while is to do the 6mm Ancients to the strongest, and I think I could probably do that for 500 pretty easily. And I don't even really think terrain wise in the 6mm tables of big battles, it's going to take much to put some terrain on the table. Even if I didn't have a 3D printer, I think I could scratch build and, do some decent little terrain for that. Cause it's really mostly the grass mat, which I already have. And, the table or whatever, the dirt mat, or whatever. And so that's kind of what I'm thinking, of where I would go with next with 500. Having said that, if I didn't, already play Marvel, there are lots of options. I mean, if you consider, the Marvel Crisis Protocol, the box set is like 10 miniatures of 2 sides, 5 and 5 skirmish, and you even get terrain in it and all your rules and all your dice and everything. And that one, you're looking only at a little over $100, and you could even buy a few figures and still be only at the halfway point. And that would be a good choice for someone if they were thinking about getting into it for less,
Yeah. Well, in any of these projects, even like the ones I mentioned, since I didn't have a lot of time to think on it, but, you don't have to start with a magazine covered table. I mean, 500, it's a start, right? You could get a game in is what I'm thinking. It doesn't have to be your, 2 years from now, you might add another 500 to really make it amazing, but you could play it,
I was just thinking the Blood and Plunder. If somebody wanted to get into that for $500, they could easily buy a couple starter armies, maybe a ship, and then they could go on like eBay or Amazon and buy a bunch of coconut trees or palm trees or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And spend maybe $50 and buy the trees and prime them and paint them and repaint them again instead of just like bare plastic. And for $500, they could be really into a game. And the same thing is like, we're looking at the Burrows and Badgers. An individual could spend $500 easily, just miniatures, buy a bunch of terrain to go with it, or the materials to build your own escape out.
We only need a handful of miniatures for Burrows and Badgers.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing. Those are good entry games. Like, the skirmish game is always a good entry game, which I think is part of the reason they're so popular now, not only just for entry, but for people that, want to try different things. And, it's like if you want to build a 200 or 300 miniature army, that's a commitment. But here you can paint up 6 or 10 guys and off you go. Or that small scale. The extreme small scales are the other way to go cheap.
But you look at if you wanted to get it, say, American Civil War at 15 mil. Put $150 into both sides for miniatures. You could have the Union and the Rebels. That's a lot of miniatures. You could easily put out probably 5 to 8 brigades worth of miniatures on both sides.
What scale did you say again, Rusty?
50.
Okay.
15.
That will leave you $200 to buy resin.
Some nice buildings even.
Nice buildings. So you could put some cabins and you could buy some trees. Even be honest, your 28 mil trees are in scale now.
Yeah.
That the stuff you would use for 28 mil, which are your railroad stuff,
would be the big trees.
Big trees now, and
your small ones would work too. Yeah, the trees would work.
You ad-libbed on the question, Rusty. You said if $500 and you own a 3D printer.
Well, doesn't everybody have one?
Well,
I think, Dan, we're the only ones that don't have one yet.
50% on.
Well, shortly I'll be the only one that doesn't have one.
50%. Survey says 50% of all wargamers now have a 3D printer.
And then next year we can graph it, and it'll be 75%.
Yeah,
or more.
Good luck.
Well, you know what the next thing is like the thing that people are getting now is the scanners.
Yes.
Where you can actually like scan something and then actually print it out.
I don't know. It must be because I'm 53, and that is very cool. But a little bit of me, whether it's nostalgia or I still like feel some, I don't know if loyalty is the word, or just some love for the small, well, frankly, even like Foundry. I mean, and they're not small and they're not new, but especially the small ones like, Burrows and Badgers, that was there one guy or a couple people that sculpt all those miniatures.
Yep.
And, man, I just love to support that when I can. And I don't feel like I'm giving anything up, but we've had this discussion before. Eventually, probably that will be a thing. That's not.
And I don't think. Well, in order to scan, you have to have somebody that does it originally, I guess, in some ways. But the thing is I actually see myself. If I was to get 6 mil, I would likely be buying them in metal.
That's what I would do too at 10 mil. Yeah.
And I mean, it's not that you can't actually print them off, but I've looked at the designs, and from what I've seen, like I would likely just go. And there is a certain amount of, I don't want metal miniatures to disappear either. Like I do want.
Me either. Yeah.
Some, and so I'm totally happy to print stuff that I'm doing for other things, and then certain things I'm going to continue to buy.
Yeah.
And
Now, Brad's here said something. Scan your homemade buildings and then reprint them in resin.
Well, and then it'll be in another 5 or 10 years. What's the new technology give us, right? It's like we can't even hardly fathom the stuff that's happening now.
And Nick is saying that the Marvel Crisis Protocol is 180 Australian there. That's crazy. I've heard about the prices that you guys suffer.
Yeah, there. I do feel their pain.
Because it's definitely not the box set. The basic box set is nowhere close to that here, to my knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, so the Marvel Crisis Protocol, I think, is like $90 to $100 or something like that.
I just ordered something from Australia, and the conversion rate is definitely in our favor.
Yeah. Well, today my son, he said, "Have you heard of Drop Zone Commander, Dad?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Well, I've been thinking about maybe getting into Drop Zone Commander. It's really got some really cool miniatures. Like, you do remember I used to have those?" It's like, "Well, you still got them?" It's like, "No, I sold them to a guy in Hong Kong." It's like,
and they're actually not easy to get now. It's like a lot of things.
Really?
No, the company is been TT Combat bought that.
Yeah.
Got the company is now the second edition is now out.
Okay, because the last time I looked, and that's granted like 10 months ago, when I went on TT Combat's page of the people that bought them, they had like nothing available. They had it all there, but you couldn't buy any of it.
Yeah. So it's now on market. So they just started.
And is it all the same miniatures, or are they updated?
Some of the same miniatures, and they've added some new stuff.
And I think that's fine. Like, in all honesty. Yeah, that's good. Because it looked like a good game.
And I think it's cheaper now than it was before.
Okay.
Or maybe the U.S. dollar is better, stronger than it used to be against the pound. So maybe that's it.
Yeah, the pound is always tough. That's always quite a bit higher than the dollar, seems like.
Yeah. It's like the last time I made I had purchased from Britain because I bought the stuff from Forge World, and I think it's $1.6 to the pound.
Could be. Yeah,
so
well,
I think
one. Yeah. The only thing is, I noticed the shipping from the UK is still pretty reasonable for whatever reason.
Most definitely.
Get you too bad there, even today.
Wow, I am feeling my one Long Island iced tea.
Bet you are.
5 shots, baby.
Oh, Lord.
Okay, so Chris had said he had bought more miniatures than in the last 4 years.
Metal miniatures.
Yeah. That's interesting. And it's for Zulu and NAM projects, which I can understand. There's hardly anything but metal miniatures for Vietnam.
Except Rubicon just came out. Did you see they've got U.S. Marines and Viet Cong multi-part kits just came out? I watched a review on them last night.
That would be something I would think about getting into. It's like if Bolt Action had Vietnam, I would definitely.
There's a Vietnam Bolt Action Facebook group out there that they've got a whole rule set just using they've just added the weapons and the army lists, and there's people playing it. You can see pictures of their games on there. I just drop by once in a while. I don't follow it too close, but
because I have to finish my North Koreans out for Korea. I'll pretty much have a Bolt Action Korean action ready to go.
Yeah.
Because all you need for Bolt Action, if you have a American Bolt Action army from World War II, you're set because it's the same equipment, same army.
I could just add a Pershing tank to it, and then I'd be totally up to date.
Oh yeah. Now, when it comes to North Koreans and Chinese, you have to start those from scratch, but it's not that expensive to get in. No. Once again, for $500, you could buy a Chinese army, a North Korean army with vehicles. For $500.
Yes, less than 500. Even if you went with really nice stuff, yeah. Beauty of a skirmish game, I guess. I don't know. Something about the skirmish games too. It's like role playing. It's like when you're a kid running around with your plastic gun or your stick that's shaped like a gun, and we'd play. We called it playing war, which is like an oxymoron if there ever was one, but.
Yeah.
But it's like your imagination was so wild you were there. So that's one of the things about the skirmish games that are so fun.
Well, this is a whole nother topic, but there is a utility level per miniature in skirmish that's a lot higher than in larger battle games, and so basically you can make the argument that I don't even think it's necessarily cost, because actually I can buy one of these boxes costs about the same as like a squad of 10, Eldar, you know what I mean? Like, there isn't that much difference in cost for that utility of whatever that miniature or two miniatures in a skirmish game than a unit within Warhammer.
Right.
However, the painting time is a lot less theoretically, despite the fact that they're individual characters. But I think that the rule card, having an actual set of rules for each miniature, means that there's just a lot more I can do with each miniature. Even though there's a lot less of them.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, right.
So the utility is different in some of these skirmish games that.
Yeah, well, and like that one, each character has its own special. I mean, each one's unique, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's kind of different in the way.
And
you're almost say that it's better, but
you're almost buying rules too, or the rules are in the book, or you get a rules card with the character.
You get a rules card with it, and you
could proxy them, or you can't proxy them.
That just depends on your gaming group. In an official tournament sponsored by the company, you probably couldn't.
Right. Well, I mean, but the rules are not only included with the miniature, right? They're for the miniature itself, like the stats. Are you buying that with the miniature, or
normally? Yes.
Okay.
You can buy a big thing of rules that have all the cards. As well. Where they're updating them and stuff, but you are tending to get the rules with the character.
Yeah. So you're buying more for that though too.
Yeah.
You're buying rules and
tokens too.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
You're buying a unit and you get your small unit codex to go with it.
Yeah, and you're getting tokens that are for that power, or whatever that you throw on the board. So it's got a few things.
I don't know. I think that's kind of gimmicky. I honestly, I prefer a rule set that actually has all the stats and so forth in the rules, and not force me to buy their miniatures to get the stats for the figures. I ran into that with what is that? I picked up the rule set of the Rome mobs in Rome.
Mobs of Rome. Yeah.
I don't know what the name of it is, but I was like, I have to buy miniatures to know what the codexes are for them. I was like, forget that.
Well, I think your opinion is completely valid, and I would say in many cases I have the same opinion. Like, I actually have rules that I like to have contain rule sets, and I like to have it all in one book. But I'm going to throw it back at you, Bill, because that's kind of the mood I'm in tonight. You used to be a big fan of X-Wing. As a matter of fact, there was a time when I actually downed X-Wing, like in a discussion. You're like, I think I'm in the wrong room, because you're like, because you really liked X-Wing. So tell me about X-Wing. Where does that fall with this?
Well, to me, I already am super familiar with what to expect from what an X-Wing is and what its performance is by the entire genre. I don't know anything about the gangs of Rome at all. I'm totally lost.
But what I mean is, when you buy your X-Wing miniatures, like when you used to play X-Wing by Fantasy Flight, you had to buy pretty much, it was pretty much needed to buy their miniature with the dials and with all the cards and the rules that came with each one. It's really no different than this. I mean, this doesn't have a dial that you need like you need an X-Wing, but pretty much you need the cards and you need like all the special stuff. So when you're playing X-Wing, you're buying a ship and you're buying kind of the rules and all of the stuff you need to play that ship to go with it. And it's pretty much against kind of what you're saying, right? Like, but at the same time, you're also allowed to change your mind. And it's been many years since we had that discussion. Like, do you still like games like that, like X-Wing, or no? Because I know there was a time when we were in a room like this and I said, there's X-Wing, whatever. And you're like, I really like X-Wing.
I like X-Wing, and I actually my counter argument is that we know what all the different fighters do in X-Wing because of the Star Wars theme. We've all watched the movies. We all see them do their thing. And I guess the Marvel is about the same way.
Yeah, because there are even now, some would argue that I would say Star Wars as a overall theme is bigger in the history of whatever, like total history. But Marvel these days has become even bigger by many people's standards.
But there's a double-edged sword with Marvel as opposed to Star Wars. I mean, Star Wars, you had the expanded universe, but there's only a few selected people that would look into that. For the most part, most people are just familiar with the movies. And that, And so basically, the miniatures game was very akin to what to expect in the movies. Now, the Marvel Crisis Protocol, I'm a uber nerd when it comes to the comic book stuff when I was a kid, which is drastically different from the movies.
Many of it,
And I don't know what to expect, when I pick up a model, whether it's going to be akin to the movie Hulk or will it be akin to the Hulk in the comics.
And it's a bit both. They've actually proven to be, they're comic fans themselves, like the guys that do this, but they have to appease the franchise too. And in my experience, if you look at their new releases coming out for this fall, some of the old Captain America villains they have in there, nobody even knows who they are. That like, unless you actually read the comics. And even MODOK, who's not really made it in the films, is a big character in the game. And so like, I would actually argue that they're trying to appease everybody a little bit. And I actually think from that perspective, I quite like it. And I don't mean to put you too much on the spot but it's funny because I find myself like we all kind of experience all these things to different degrees, like with the games that we play. You know what I mean?
Well,
like,
and another example would even just be, I mean, it's true in bolt action and then like 40K and those things too, where they have basically the army books, right? That's kind of the same thought, because I go to which I don't care because I'm not trying to win the tournament, but I go to the bolt action tournament, and a lot of people now, not a lot of people bring like Americans or Germans. They'll bring. I fought a Hungarian army. There's people that'll bring like a certain campaign theater from within, like they would take Germans defending Berlin German army. So they've got a lot of special rules, special units, and so then you're meeting them on the table, and of course, for the first time, you're seeing this and trying to process the rules as you're trying to, start your game that's on a time limit. Always kind of leaves you a little left-footed there, but the same kind of thing, because I'm not going to buy all the army books, right? I buy the ones that I have the army for, or if it's interesting, because I used to hear about the 40K guys that were uber competitive. They'd go out and buy all the codexes to try to know what everybody's armies could do. And that always, I mean, I get what they're doing a little bit. They're obviously trying to sell product, but they're also breaking it down to where, like, if one book gets changed, they don't have to re-release 400 pages of book. And I don't have to buy 400 pages of book. I can buy, or 1,000. I can buy the couple I want. So it's one of those things that's a love-hate thing for me. But
yeah. Well, in the same way we were talking before, AD&D battle systems. I mean, if you take out the nostalgia of it, one of the things that I really like about it is that it's just a book like in your hand, and as Bill was saying, like it has all of the stats for everything you need in it, and even more in that it allows you to take creatures from D&D and build them yourself according. It teaches you how to import creatures from D&D into the game.
I've got that rules book somewhere around here. I have that. Yeah.
So you can actually take, like, I think they have owl bears in there, but let's say the owl bear is not in there. You can go to 2nd edition D&D, which you can easily get the stats for an owl bear, and you can make an owl bear unit just by looking at their calculator and how you do it.
I remember
and then also you can look at all of the stuff that they already have in there, and so you don't have to buy, a box for each thing to get the rules for all the things that are needed in the game. But considering the low number of people in a game, of Marvel Crisis Protocol and how you make up your game, and the fact that I'm a uber Marvel fan, I still enjoy this. Like I love this game, but and so on the one hand, I can completely feed into the machine, of like buying this stuff and enjoying it. And then on the other hand, I can kind of pull up like Warhammer Fantasy 3rd edition or AD&D battle systems and really appreciate contained rule systems.
Agreed.
And find comfort in contained rule systems. So
well, and that's one of the interesting things about playing out of print games is, like if you choose to play Warhammer 6th edition, all that stuff is easily available, and it's a closed system. I mean, that's what it is. There aren't going to be expansions. There aren't going to be reworks, and so it gives you that sort of contained system going retro.
Well, and one positive thing I guess I haven't really thought about, Bill, you're playing Saga now, or you're really gearing up to do a lot of Saga and stuff. 1st edition Saga for Dark Ages, which was like how it all started, like before they came out with the Crusades and stuff, you had to buy like an army book, like kind of like in Warhammer. Like if you wanted to play Vikings, you bought the Vikings book, like in addition to the Saga rulebook. If you wanted to play Anglo-Danes or whatever, you bought the Anglo-Danes book, and they were thinly over kind of priced books that they weren't full size codexes, even like by Warhammer standards, but they were still books you had to buy. But now in 2nd edition, you just buy the Dark Ages and universe, and you get all of them in it. And I think that's a lot better, like in my mind, than having to basically buy each faction, like you used to have to.
It brings up. I prefer the codex or supplement books to telling me, okay, well, in order to know the stats and so forth of this particular unit, you have to buy this miniature.
I see. That's
to me, that is annoying.
Yeah. I could understand it, and
you feel like you're forced into it, really, kind of. Yeah.
I got a couple caveats to go with it. It's like I have the Star Wars X-Wing game, first edition, and then when they went to second edition, they went and turned around and said, okay, if you want to play second edition, you have to go out and buy these kits to upgrade all of your craft that you have, all your ships, and that could cost you $200-$300.
That was to go to the second edition. Yeah.
And I'm like, everybody I knew was like, no, we're not doing it. So it pretty much put a damper on anybody wanting to continue the game. It's like we haven't played since they went to second edition.
Okay.
Well, I never converted to second edition because I didn't. It was just one of those things where I didn't feel like it was adding that much, for me. I actually still have all my first edition stuff. I didn't sell it because I actually really like the game. I use that as an example with Bill, and maybe it was an example. It wasn't an example to down X-Wing because I actually really enjoyed X-Wing. It kind of reminded me of Christmas in a lot of ways because I grew up when I got action figures in Christmas morning, for Star Wars, and so for me, getting all this Star Wars stuff, I actually got X-Wing stuff at Christmas because it reminded me of Christmas when I was a kid. I wanted to open up a TIE fighter, like on Christmas. And I was late in getting into the version 1. Like a lot of people were getting into it, and I avoided it. But once I got into it, I was kind of hooked. I actually, not to the point of going to tournaments and stuff. That would never be me. But just even with friends, like I liked the commercial dice that you have, like the really cool miniatures, the way that you had the movement templates was very elegant in the way you move the miniatures. It just felt elegant moving the ships around with all these like plates and stuff, and then not knowing like where your opponent was going to be, and like it was just. And then I play a lot of Armada now because that's the one I prefer of the two even more. But I actually even like the dials. I think it's been so long since I played X-Wing. Is it speed that's on the dial? I think it's the speed of the ship that you have on the circle.
You put on your turn, whatever speed, turn, etc.
Yeah, the turn was the template you put down or something. Oh no, you're right. The turn was on the dial. Yeah. And the speed. Yeah, exactly. And so, I thought that the people that came up with X-Wing were brilliant. To be quite honest, the game. I thought it was a brilliant.
It is a good game. I played first edition. Yeah,
it was so much fun.
A couple times.
I still have all my first edition stuff too. My only critique about it is the name of the game is X-Wing, and that happens to be like one of the worst fighters in the game.
Oh yeah, you don't take. It's like you play nothing but TIE fighters. It's TIE fighter spam. So that's what it came down to.
What was the second one that was blue? The X-Wing that was blue that came out with the newer movies. So you had like, how the most latest series of movies, the first movie.
Oh yeah,
the
they
first
upgraded from the new editions as 7, 8, and 9.
Yeah, the next X-Wing they came out with was better. That actually, if I remember correct, that had Poe Dameron as the pilot. But you're right. Like they had all this other stuff. Well, that it's like anything. It was one of those games that did suffer rules complexity because there was just so many ships, and they had to keep coming out with more and more. The one thing they did with Marvel is the first 20 characters. They have upgraded the first 20 characters to be in line with the power creep, because honestly, She-Hulk was just going to basically smash face on Hulk any day of the week. She came out later, and she was just going to destroy the Hulk like every time. And they've actually like upgraded the Hulk, which you needed to do. Because what's Marvel without a Hulk?
So how do you get the upgrade? Is that just free or what?
Well, they did give cards for free with that. Like they have 2 upgrades. They had one intermediate step where they did some rules release, and they kind of did like a card that they just let you download online.
Yeah.
But then they did actually do an official one where they released the cards online. So you didn't have to pay for cards for the characters you already had. They did give them online, but they are actually also releasing a pack of extra cards, like the ones that you use for utility, like things that you use in the game, and then the original characters that you can get, should you choose to do it. And I'm the kind of person that I'll probably buy it just because I'd rather not really figure out printing them all off on cardstock and stuff.
Well, if it's a game you play and
it's the game I play the most right now. Cool. So yeah.
Now, I don't know if anybody has seen this, but this goes with your name, Palmer. Their Horus Heresy 2nd edition is now coming out.
Oh boy!
Oh yeah, it's like now. This is the interesting thing is that they have a box set. The box set starts at $300, and you get the rule book inside it, and you get your units and everything in it. Kind of nice, but it's all heresy stuff. I look at early power armor versions in plastic, but you have the basically their codex books. You have the Emperor side, the Heretic side. There's 2 books right there. So you got the rule book, and then you got the other 2 books that was the Heretics versus the Allied. And then come in August, they're talking about the Mechanicum is coming.
And that's where you come in.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing, for you've invested, that's so much money, that Forge World stuff that you've actually invested in. Those models are so cool. That is one thing, like, I always really admired. I always loved those models, but I couldn't, like, with all the other stuff I was getting at the time, I could never justify the price. But I would be looking at that if I was you. Like, if with all those, like, really cool Mechanicum Forge World models, you have 28 mil models. When that comes out, I could not avoid not looking at that. So
yeah, it's like I was at the point the other day where I was like looking at Forge World miniatures, like, I need another unit, 3 of these guys, another 6 of these guys, and I'll finish this unit out, or they make another unit of these guys. And then I was like looking at the price, and I'm like, I remember paying $60 for those 3 guys before. Now it's $120. Like,
oh yeah, they've really went up. I won't even buy. There's a character model that I really wanted from the Horus Heresy character series just to paint, and I looked at the price.
Which one?
Iodon, the world, Emperor's Children.
Emperor's Children.
Yeah, guy, the one that's on like kind of like a piece of a knight on the ground, and he has a hammer. He's got like the long white hair. But yeah, I just remember from reading the books, and he's got that such a cool opportunity to paint because he's like that purple with the white hair, and I was like, I would love to paint that, And but every time I've looked at it, it's only went up in price, and every time I'm like, no, and it's like going no, it just keeps going up in price.
Okay, only the guys that are halfway to being a millionaire can afford it.
Well, there's another way of affording it.
That's something I need to ask Chris if anybody has STLs of the Horus Heresy, because the way to go.
To be honest with you, if you do some searching around the and Mini Factory and so forth, there are artists that compete and exceed Games Workshop sculptors.
Yeah.
So you can actually get the same characters but sculpted better.
Yeah.
Which is
actually yeah,
something.
That's true. It's true. I was
to say just until yesterday my Mechanicum army was sitting right there.
Yeah.
Along with this, you got the Tag Modem book now. I had that out looking at it, and I was like flipping through. I was like, okay, that's literally was like. Then I priced it out. It would cost me around $1,000 just to get the extra miniatures to fill out these units. I was like,
well, you could buy your
printer and print a lot of resin for that price.
Well, and actually, I was telling Rusty that I can pretty much get the nostalgia and like what I like out of it by actually printing. For the Apocalypse game that I'm playing, I can do Mechanicum, and I can print the vast majority of the models that we're talking about for Mechanicum, and I can pretty much get all of that nostalgia and all that kind of cool feeling out of just in the same way I have with the smaller scale stuff here. And just do that just with the printer, as Bill's saying, and that's likely what I'll do with that. The character model, it's kind of, we're all kind of weird in some ways, in that I kind of like what Dan was saying earlier. Like, I think I always wanted that one, like the one that was made by Forge World, that sort of, and then, you know, to maybe paint it, feature it on the YouTube channel or something. Like, I don't think I'd feel the same way about like doing a China Cast one or something, you know, like, and putting it up on the YouTube channel. It was just something that I always kind of wanted. But like, to your point though, there's equally good, if not better, models for like Marvel and stuff, like on, that I can print off, 3D printing, that I can paint up, that are just, would be fantastic painting projects, you know, and I can do kind of like what you said. But I always kind of wanted that one. And every time I looked, it was just, maybe I will, maybe having said that, maybe tomorrow I'll look and I'll find an Iodon that you're talking, now that you're talking about it, you got it in the back of my mind. It's like, maybe I will just do that, because I'm not going to get it either way otherwise, you know, so I might as well just do it.
Yeah. It's one of those things where you really think hard. It's like getting that. We had this conversation. We go back, I think it's 3 years ago, or maybe even 4 years ago, maybe in our first season. And I said, there's going to be a point where somebody's going to have 3D printers. 3D printers will be cheap enough where they'll just start printing everything. Yeah. And now it's come. It's here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I didn't believe it then. I was one of the people who was like, yeah, you'll never be this or whatever. Like, there'll always be this problem. But I amazed myself with the printer that I've got here. So,
and I have to also agree with you too, Palmer. With my story is back in 91 or 92, I went to a Historicon and went to the booth of Old Glory Miniatures and saw they had a new line of miniatures for the French and Indian War. You know, and they were fantastic. And in the back of my mind, I was like, "Oh, I want them." And about in 7 or 8 years ago, I started watching your channel, Palmer, and your muskets and tomahawks stuff, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and now I have the money. I'm gonna go get that stuff. And I ordered the entire line.
Yeah.
How fun!
Yeah, painted them all up.
Yeah. No, exactly. And you know, sometimes it's nice. Like, we all have different views on money and things at times. And actually, like, I remember having very specific discussions with Dan about some of the expensive terrain that he buys, because you buy really good quality terrain and it's for your core system, like your World War II. And even though you're making stuff, you've invested in some really expensive pieces that many people that are spread across many games and many tables would not personally justify at times, you know, but we all have our different kind of reasons and, you know, legitimate reasons, you know, to do it. When I, granted, it was a Forge World sale, but when I bought all these samurai buildings for a long time, I really liked for World War II for bolt action my Forge World buildings that I bought, foreground. You mean I bought is what I meant. Yeah, I really liked them, but I never could just continue to go back to them because I never found them very affordable. I found foreground to be kind of expensive for me when I'm buying for a lot of different games, but I heard they were going out of business. I'm just getting into this game. I always liked their Japanese buildings, you know, and I kind of liked putting together their kits. Like, I just found I enjoyed the process, and so I just said, you know what, I'm never going to do this again. I'm just going to go all out. I'm just going to get the whole village. Just going to get like just about everything, you know, and you know, it was discounted like almost 30 to 40% off, and then I did it. I didn't even think about it. I was like, I'm just going to do it. Boom. And, you know, and it's great. Yeah. Like, sometimes it's good just to make a decision, not worry about it. But most of the time, I'm not like that. Most of the time.
Kind of segued into you have something that you really enjoy. And you just kind of like, it's a niche that you want to collect everything in it. It's like the same thing as like, it's like the Forge World Mechanicum Army. It's like I could look at all the other stuff that's on Forge World and be like, yeah, that's cool, but it doesn't draw me. But when I look at those Mechanicum units, I look at them and go, I really have to have those.
Yeah.
I may not have, I played a few games with them, and they just rocked and rolled and just rolled over everybody. It's like normal 40K armies, and like, what are those things? What are they doing? I was like, it's Mechanicum. But I look at it, like, I don't have it's like I said, it's like I would want to fill out the units, but it would cost me $1,000 to fill them out. It's like I got one sample of that unit, one sample of this unit, one sample of that unit. But that's 3 models. It's 9 miniatures to fill out, and that's like $300.
Right.
Or you're talking almost $400 for a unit.
Right.
And that's what you're looking at prices of Forge World stuff. And you're like, yeah, I like the samples of them, but I don't think I can afford to fill out all these units.
Well, I mean, that's always a trick with this hobby. I mean, there's way more expensive hobbies, no question about it. And this one can be expensive as well, but it's all how you want to manage that. And for me, that's how I do it is which we've talked sort of extensively, but I have my core games and I really hold myself to that. And I like that because I like everybody have limited time and resources, but then I can really, like Palmer said, on my bolt action World War II, I splurged on those buildings because I get my bang for my buck for that, let alone just my enjoyment level. But I mean, I had hours of fun painting them, and I thought about it for a long time. And so if I've spread out over a bunch of game systems, even if I wanted to take my painting and terrain down several notches, which I maybe wouldn't enjoy as much anyway, but I in my mind, I can justify and I can come up with the funds to really go hardcore into those few areas.
And one day when you pass away, you'll be sent out on a boat surrounded by all of your expensive terrain, and then it'll be lit on fire, and you'll be just...
I'm just going to curl up really small in my casket so they can fill the whole bottom half with it. I'll be burned. Yeah, I'll be. Yeah.
You get a Viking
I always
burial.
think, do you ever think about that? Yeah. What are you going to do with all this stuff? I mean, do you ever think about that? Like, will you sell it? Because I mean, not that I'm
is
old,
not the
but
right word.
I'm kind of at the next step where, you know,
when
the
am
kid...
I not thinking about it?
Yeah.
Is the question.
Well, I'm lucky enough that I have a son.
Yeah, you've mentioned that he'll take a bunch.
He's gonna. It's like I've told my son already. He's like, everything that's in here, if it's still around, if what I pass, it's yours.
Yeah.
And we were just talking about, because I something a lot of people don't know. I've talked about. I played a lot of Magic: The Gathering, the cards.
But on your deathbed, I'll tell you that I'm going to keep it and treasure it.
Okay, my wife is in the peanut gallery saying that when I die, she's gonna eBay all my stuff.
Well, at least you know.
You're not getting the Viking burial.
Deathbed that I'm going to treasure it always.
Oh, she's saying that she'll lie to me on my deathbed and say that she'll keep it and treasure it, and then after I die, you sell it to eBay. Okay, honey.
Well, that's better than binning it. I guess. Dumpster.
Well, I was saying, it's like my son today. It's like, hey, Dad, do you know those dual lands for Magic? Do you have any of those? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, well, what do you got? It's like, I got 4 of these, probably 4 to 8 of these, and I just rattle them off. And he was like, he comes over and he starts showing me. He's like, you got some of those? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, look at the price. He's like, $600-800 per card. Wow. And I was like, I'm sitting on. It's like, he's like, Dad, you realize you're sitting on probably maybe $500,000 worth of cards. And I'm like, what am I doing with all these cards? I might have to start selling these things.
Yeah. How many Battletech mechs will that buy?
More than I could afford. The paint.
Wow.
So yeah, I got into that game when it was alpha. So I used to have complete sets and everything at one time.
So I always hope that, like, when I don't know if you never know when, but it'd be nice. I'd love to give my stuff to somebody that would enjoy it. I mean, I don't want to give to somebody, oh, it's cool, and then I'm going to eBay it in a year, or it's cool. Even if they thought it was cool and it sat in a display case, not because it's mine, but, you know, because some of my stuff, you know, like the Warhammer stuff is, you know, it's done. It's sort of a historic piece in a way, right? You know? And it'd just be nice. I'd love it if somebody that didn't have enough money or time and just always wanted to do it, I'd love to just give it to them, you know? Because it's not, I don't have millions of dollars. There's not even, I mean, if I sold everything I had on eBay, well, maybe some of the Warhammer stuff would bring a bunch, but I mean, we're maybe talking a couple thousand. I mean, I don't have anything crazy valuable.
My friend, the same guy that I'm doing this Civil War project with, he gave me. He said, I'm going to give you all these epic miniatures because you're the only person I know that appreciate him and that wants to paint. Because I've had a couple heart attacks. You know, I'm 67, and I don't know if I'm going to be around in another 5-10 years. Mm-hmm. So here, I'm going to give you these. And he said, and I got these miniatures. Do you want to paint them for me? It's like I'll paint them for you. You know, it's like you gave me the miniatures. I'll paint them for just.
That's awesome.
So he's in that process where he's realizing almost everybody that was older than him that
is gone.
Is gone. I've said this before. It's like that gaming group out the Iowa Miniature Associated with Wargamers. I say 50% or more are gone.
Mm-hmm.
They've passed on.
Time moves on.
And what happened to all their stuff that they had? They used to have massive armies of historicals. Did they just get dumped in a dumpster someplace or what? I don't know.
Or does it go to some estate sale type place where it just gets thrown all in a box for $1?
It's like, I'll give you $10 for everything. And it's like you're talking thousands of dollars of finely painted miniatures, and somebody's like, that's just garbage or whatever.
This is my take on it. My and actually part of it was just developed as we were talking. No, honestly, I've come to a realization just right now that but one of the things is I have 2 daughters that are kind of a little bit pack rats. They actually, I think that, well, one, they're both Marvel fans, so I know my Marvel miniatures are not going to be sold. Like, even just from the fact that I painted them, they're going to probably keep them because they like Marvel miniatures. They'll probably wonder who gets to have them, you know, in all honesty. And there's a couple other things that they probably keep, but there's stuff they would have no interest in too, like my Infinity models and things like that or whatever. But from my perspective, and I think part of this probably may have to just be what your philosophical existential belief is, but I don't think it's going to matter. Like, once I pass. So if I enjoy it now, and then I enjoy it to the moment that I die, whether or not somebody gets the full price for what it's worth, or whether it ends up on a shelf in some deep discount place, and then somebody walks in and either realizes that they got a super deal, or
that's true.
You know, like, I actually don't care. Like, that's what I've just determined now. I used to kind of think about, well, I should probably start selling some of this stuff off, you know, because I don't have to have so much later to get rid of. And, you know, and in all honesty, although it might make it a little easier for the folks around you, because I have had a parent pass away and had to get rid of all their stuff.
Yeah. You have a good point. My biggest thing is to just be nice. I'd love to have somebody just get a kick out of it. Like you said, it could be a discount store and they're like, oh my God, they've got these marked for $10.
Yeah.
And that would make me smile. I mean, I don't care about the money myself.
Yeah. And I think giving stuff away to people that would appreciate it. One of the things that's like for particularly for you, Dan, who likes the old hammer.
Thanks for doing that, honey. I appreciate it.
For since you like the old hammer,
thank you very much, honey.
You probably have a sense of like worth, you know, like to this stuff of what it costs. You know, Rusty, you know, I think we all do to some degree. I think that's what it comes down to. Like, I sometimes would worry that, like, this is stuff that's well, where I was going with this was we're actually at a point now where a lot of people find this stuff nostalgic.
Yep.
The concern I have is that in 20 years,
it's not nostalgic to the kids because they don't
That's
even know what
right.
it is.
That's right. So like to the kids because they don't even know what it is. That's right. So like right now, my Beastmen are ridiculous to buy, like on eBay, like
right. Same as the Bretonians.
Even more so the Bretonians. But I actually think in 20 or 30 years, it won't make a difference at all.
Will they, or will it be like a 1940s car? You know, maybe you get old enough and it's cool again, or it's interesting, or it's rare, or it's collectible now.
There may be.
Maybe it's not nostalgia. It'll be a different draw.
I don't think it's going to be as much as it is now, and I actually think that it's going to be like there'll always be a rarity kind of thing as things disappear. But I don't think that the guys that are our age, roughly speaking,
they're doing what we're doing, being nostalgic.
Not now. Like you and I are not going to probably be buying in our 80s and 90s these things. No. And so right now we're at a point where there's like a balance of energy and expendable income.
Yeah, it's kind of a perfect storm with COVID too. And I think it got everybody kind of thinking about life is crazy. Where's my happy place? I remember it was simpler when I was a kid. We're not going to live forever, you know, and being locked up. And then our age group is finally getting to where we have some disposable income.
Yeah,
it was a perfect storm.
I think in the next decade or so, like, you know, it's still going to be roughly the same, you know, whatever. But I think we're going to hit a point after that where all of a sudden it's not really the cat's pajamas as it is right now.
Probably.
And there's going to be other stuff that's going to become popular that we don't even know about.
Yeah.
Like,
although so much of that stuff isn't out there. Like what I'm trying to think, like, what will my kids, because they talk about once in a while, they're like, Dad, what do you think? What'll be the songs we talk about and the movies we talk about? And there's less toys and stuff. A lot of it was electronics, right? Well, they tried to find their old first flip phone or what are they going to do? Right. It's different now.
There'll be something, I'm sure.
You
know what? There are a big thing right now that will be probably a big thing then are the retro video game market. Yeah. Like, so retro video games are huge. Yeah. And they're probably going to continue to be huge.
That's true.
Like it's only going to get more and more, you know, like people find ways to spend money on so much stuff. There'll always be something else.
Oh, I know. But and even like their music is different now as far as we always had, you know, trying to get the old album, you know, either it's vinyl or the CD or the whatever, but you know, their music, my kids don't own a single album or tape. It's all, you know, downloaded live stream type, you know.
Yeah, don't get me started.
Right. But I mean, you know, that's
totally no.
At some point when do you get to where it's a whole different like mindset? Like we can't even really think about it in those terms because we grew up in a different time.
I still buy albums, I still buy physical media, and but it's a totally different world now. Yeah.
Oh, you look at gaming today is a great example. Is that too many young kids today is like, well, why isn't it only on PDF? Because they do everything on their phone. They expect everything to be able to be put on their phone, and we're a tactile generation.
Yeah, love the rule book.
This.
Yeah, I do. I want the book.
Feel it and read it because
smell it.
Smell it. It smells new.
I know.
And even when the electricity goes out, you can have that next to on your bed table.
Exactly.
Yeah, during the apocalypse, we can still play our game.
We're analog. We're an analog generation.
Yeah. I used to feel the same way, but I've actually changed as my eyesight has gotten a little worse. I use my tablet a lot when I'm reading, and I zoom it out.
Yeah.
Okay. That's valid point.
So,
and it's a nice thing when you're gaming too to be able to pull up a million rule books like while you're gaming at the table and stuff. And
I just have a hard time looking through the book because I know, like in the bolt action book, it's about yay far back on the left side, and I just have a hard time looking through PDFs in any kind of a. It's like proofreading. When I proofread, I have to print it out. It's just the way my mind works. I can't proofread 100%.
I get sidetracked too easy. It's like I'm looking at something on my phone. I'm supposed to read it, and I just kind of like, oh, what's my other social media doing? Oh, okay, I got that. Okay. I got to go through my emails and answer stuff on my YouTube channels, and it's like.
You're the senior member of this group. That might be age, Rusty. I'm just kidding.
I am definitely. I'm a baby boomer. I'm sorry. It's like I am a baby boomer generation. I am at the tail end of the baby.
Yeah.
I'm the last year of them, but yeah, it's like I definitely have a lot of aspects of what the old generation when it comes. I embrace the new technology. And I like it, but there's a lot of me just says no. I want to feel it. I want to touch it. I would just like to me that's reality.
Well, I think anybody that's pre-internet, has some of that in them, right? We've all embraced the new technology, and there's a lot of good, but the nostalgia is from when we were younger before that, and that's the stuff that really kind of pulls at your heartstrings.
Yeah. I also prefer the pricing of PDFs to text.
And sometimes, you are not wrong. Good point.
Well, the interesting thing about PDFs is if somebody does get a PDF, you can pass it on to your friends too.
The other thing that's funny too.
That didn't happen on this show.
No, that never happens, Rusty. I don't know what you're talking about.
You're breaking up, Rusty.
What? Can't hear you.
You mean passing on when we were talking about death, right? Like that's what you're
saying. Yeah, when you pass on.
When you pass on,
your
everything
kids.
goes.
Yeah, there you are.
The funny thing when we talk about tactile and nostalgia and all this stuff, like when you're around people like we are right now that are into the same stuff, then a lot of it's it's funny. I can hear myself right now talking.
Yeah, it's echoing.
I hear you echoing.
Yeah, I don't know why.
It just started doing that recently.
Yeah, a lot of this stuff. I haven't changed anything on my side, so I'm not sure. Usually, it's coming through somebody else's speakers. Now I don't hear it. It's just I heard it again. Anyway, what I was saying is I'm just looking at my troll, that I've got here. Okay, like my Warhammer Fantasy troll, 6 middle hammer. Okay, solid middle hammer stuff.
Solid, yeah.
And we talk about wargaming as if it's a norm, because we're actually like all in this hobby and like totally into it. But when I think about like I actually work in there's like a lot of doctors around me and just like other folks, all different kinds of people, and like if anybody hears, like when people hear, like, and some people do like hear, what my hobby is, and then some don't, but anybody hears this kind of stuff, like they don't even have a reference point for this. Most people don't even have a reference point for painting little statues that you would then actually move around a table to destroy other people's statues, and it's funny, like when you think about it that way, it's kind of hilarious. I'm not saying this that we're weird or anything like that, but it's just no, we're not weird. No,
I don't know what you're talking about. That was weird to even say that.
They're the ones that are weird, not us. But
actually, when it comes to explaining the hobby to someone who, well, like a normie, I guess you could call them.
Normie.
You'd be surprised how many people know about Dungeons and Dragons.
Yes, that's the first thing I was going to think of. Yeah,
and you just say, well, it's like Dungeons and Dragons, but it's with not just 5 models on the table, but a couple hundred.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Well, my wife always likes to explain it this way. It's like, well, you always see in the movies where they're moving around the objects for a war, and it's like this unit's moving over here, and they're sliding him around. Well, that's what my husband does. He just kind of moves his units around. Then they roll dice and figure out what happened, and they go, "Oh, okay."
Well, but Bill, when you talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and normies understanding that because they watch Stranger Things or something like that, and they know like what a miniature is or something. When you say that you do Dungeons and Dragons or something like that, I still don't think that what they conjure in their mind is you straining over a light with like paints and like painting models. You know what I mean? Like to them, like they're thinking that you're sitting around with friends and talking about like your adventure, you know what I mean? Kind of like, and I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but it's kind of funny. It's just these days everything is so video game oriented and like so different than this kind of hobby that it's just funny. I just think it's hilarious. Sometimes you just when you do speak with someone, but I guess it's all somebody's reference point.
Yeah. But I noticed. Oh, go ahead.
I'd say. And one of the Facebook groups is like the veterans group on Facebook, And it's like one of the guys like, well, what war games or video games does everybody play? And it's like, well, I don't really play video games, but I play analog games because they're physical games. That's what kind of gaming we do. I do play one or two, I play World of Warships. It's like I love warships. I'm sorry, so it's like it's a thing.
I kind of got the sense of that tonight from the discussion.
I like blowing things up with warships, but most of the stuff is all analog. I always like to say it's analog versus digital. Mm-hmm. That's the society we live in, and we have I think we got one solid foot into the analog world still.
And you meaning us? This four people here.
Anybody that plays war games like we do on the table, you got one foot in the analog world because it is a physical object you're pushing around on the table.
Well, what about this? What if you're a canvas painter? Do you have one foot in the analog world?
Yes.
I would say so too.
Yeah. Because you have a media that is physical. You're talking about a physical media because you could be a artist and do everything digital.
You're going back to the people in the Renaissance, like you're doing the same kind of stuff.
Yeah.
People have done for centuries. If you're, painting on canvas with oil paints or whatever,
stuff that Romans and Carthaginians painted on physical object. They actually chiseled stuff in physical object. There's a handful of people that still do that, but it's not very common.
It is interesting to see there are a fair amount of young people still coming into the hobby, though, because like at that tournament I was at, there was almost 400 people in that tournament in the various game systems. And so like when we had a break, or lunch or whatever, you could wander through the different rooms. They were in the gym. This school has 2 gymnasiums and then in a lot of hallways and rooms and stuff. They had games going everywhere. But it was interesting to see the age. I would say more often than not, they were 30s and up, maybe even upper 30s. But there were young kids in their 20s. There's a kid that was in high school. And then there was interesting to also see there were people coming through, and I don't know if they were. I could hear it echoing in my ear too, but there were people coming through that I think were just. I don't think they had anybody playing there or something, but they were just coming through just to see what this was, and they were just like amazed, and they loved coming up to the tables while we were playing and like asking questions, and they were just like, "Oh my God, this terrain, these buildings are amazing, and the painting is incredible, and and it's just it was kind of a neat venue to kind of expose people to it, and it was amazing, and the tournament grows each year. It's interesting to see,
I'm not somebody that really knows a lot about the generational differences of every generation of kids coming up and young people coming up, because I think there's several groups, Gen Z and Gen Y and like all these different ones that have grown up at different times, and there's possibility that there are those that that things could turn almost back where they value things differently, like they assume digital but are marveled by real works, and things like that, and like it's possible that we assume about all of the newer generations may not be the case for all of them, in the way they actually value things, if that makes sense.
Well, and there's differences between the generations, and some of them are kind of compensating for what the other one was. I mean, that's what they say, like supposedly our generation was kind of all about work,
greed,
and then more work, and position and all that. And we're now like our kids, I forget what generation, whatever they are, they're more the other way. They're more about life balance, and they're more open-minded, and they're it's like sometimes, and whether that means it goes back and forth or if it progresses in different directions, but hopefully in a positive way. But so it's hard to say, like you said, what will the next, like my grandson born, what will his thing, what are they kind of, and again, we're labeling, they're obviously not all the same, like you said. You know, they're groups within the groups.
Which kind of brings up an interesting question: is how many of us here have brought a young person into the hobby? Actually, it's like I know for my fact, my daughter plays D&D. She has her own group she plays with. She's an engineer. You know, she's a career woman. She's 24, 25 now. 25. And she plays D&D. That's one of her hobbies on the side. So that is, I used to play D&D together. So brought that in. My son, he plays Wargamers, Battletech. He plays Warhammer. You know, he does the other stuff. And he brought his friend with him into the hobby. So it makes you wonder how many people actually physically draw people in over the years. Because unless you grab somebody, how many of them are actually going to gravitate from a digital world to a analog world around the table?
The closest thing I've done to bringing younger people into the hobby would be the last gaming convention I went to up in Phoenix. I hosted one of the only miniatures game in that gaming convention. 90% of the people there were for board games.
Yeah.
And about 9% were for role-playing games. And then I was the 1% for the...
Oh, cool.
And so I brought a game called Gaslands.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And it was literally Hot Wheels cars on the table.
Uh-huh.
That's a good choice, yeah.
And it's something that people are familiar with. Hey, Hot Wheels cars I can get over at the Walgreens, you know? I can go over to Dollar Tree, get 5 of them.
Yeah.
And it's not going to price them out of existence like Games Workshop.
Mm-hmm.
And I not only demonstrated the game, I got overflow for the sign up. There you go. For the sign up for that game, and the majority of the people, I'm 50 years old, but the majority of the people were in their 30s.
Yeah.
And they had never played a miniatures game before. They're all from the board game side. And
interesting.
Board game hobby has become super
big. It's huge.
So if we're gonna draw anyone to into our miniatures hobby, instead of in the past where we draw them from role playing, I think the board game hobby is where it's at.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, there's quite a number of board games that kind of feel like
cross in. Yep.
Feel like miniatures games. Like there's a game called Mansions of Madness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you guys have played that, but
I haven't played it, but I'm familiar.
It's basically a miniatures game,
Mm-hmm.
you know, with cards and stuff. So yeah, that's what I've done recently.
Well done.
To get people into it. Whether I threw the mud at the wall, and I don't know if any of it stuck, but you never can tell.
Exposure.
You're planting a seed in them that they experience something new, and then eventually they're going to go from there.
I think probably I'm going to go the opposite route. I think I'm going to bring miniatures games to nursing homes.
Hey.
Well, they probably already people that are playing.
Do you have time for a long game?
Well, I'm 83. Not too long.
Give me everything I got.
But do you have time today? Are you doing anything?
We'll play until we'll see what happens. We may not finish.
By the time I do this, they'll all be Star Wars fans.
That's possible. Yeah, I can't say I've brought anybody young into it. Just more partly because I'm so secluded out here anyway. So
yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. But I think that's something we got to look at. Well, I have to say one thing. We've been going almost 3 hours and 20 minutes.
Yeah, it's past my bedtime.
I think it is about time.
Time to call it a night. Well, that's been a very good show tonight. I have to say, we actually threw about 3 extra topics into the show. We just kind of keep transitioning along.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you got to follow where the discussion takes you. You know.
Yeah. Some good topics, and
I'd like to thank both Bill and Dan for joining us tonight because this is the last of season 5. I think we are intending to do season 6. Rusty and I have only talked as if I think we are planning on doing it. I think. I want to thank everybody that's been chatting with us as our sort of loyal, audience and chatters that come in, like both at times. So it's been a great, cool season. It's went really quick for me.
Yeah, it's like
a blur.
You get some ideas where you go from there. It's like we'll probably do a lot of paint chats again, and then we'll have occasional shows like we do where we have discussion. So.
That's awesome. Yeah, I enjoy watching them. Sometimes I have to watch them later, but I always follow them. They're fun. It's fun. Thanks for having me.
When you need to start bringing this out into the field, Stan, with you. Like you could listen to it while you're actually doing stuff out there.
Maybe a lot of this.
But I do want to share one thing before we go for the end of the season. Season 5.
That's hard to believe. It's 5 seasons. Wow.
Yeah, it's like we keep on going. We're like the Energizer Bunnies.
I actually said that to Rusty today. I was like, we're going to be in the 6th season next fall.
When do you start? Do you have? I mean, typically, I know you haven't picked a start date.
It's September, October, somewhere in there.
Yes, you guys do that wrong. You start right when I'm going into harvest, and then you finish right when I'm coming out of planting.
Well, there's a lot of time in there where you're free. That's just
well, I always look forward to it. So,
but I totally understand how your life is because I've been there. So it's
I'm getting too old for this, though.
I was just talking to my wife the other night, and I said, farmers are somebody by the time they reach 70 have decided to sell the farm or pass it on to their kids because it is too hard to do.
Yeah, the only thing I will say now, if you're just a dirt farmer, the equipment's a lot easier to live with than it was, 30, 40 years ago. So some of the old guys go longer than they used to. But yeah, if you had livestock, your body's used up. For sure.
And you pass it on. It's like if you pass it to your son or daughter and they take over the farm, occasionally it's like, it's harvest time or planting season. I can help you.
That's when my dad always came out and helped. Yeah. But then he got to where he couldn't. But my daughters aren't coming back, so it's me, and then that's it.
Yeah, I'm the
Dan and Rusty get along so well that even when a show's ending, they can find plenty of things to catch up on.
We got a lot of things in common.
Sorry. Yeah. All right, we better shut her down.
All right.
Thank you, season 5, everybody. We're gonna start up.
Everybody.
We're gonna start up with the costs of dirt farming on the next episode, the next season.
New topic.
September or October. Everybody.
All right. Take care, Bill. Good to see you guys.
All right. Good night, everyone. Thanks for being on.
Nice.
See you guys.